Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday Night Sci-Fi Shadow Chat. That intro, of course, was Shadow of the Stars by that was Shadow of Love by Rick and the 28mm RPG channel ensemble, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what he calls his band, but thanks again, Rick. It's always he nailed it. I asked him for a certain, thing, and it was Chef's Kiss. So how the hell is everybody doing tonight?
I'm going to have to hit up 28mm for a theme song.
Yeah.
Have to pay him.
Yeah, you know what? Be
4
careful,
million
though.
shekels.
When Connell asked Rick if he would do a theme song for the Cigar DM, he told him, yeah, when you get to 1,000 subs. So,
I'm well past
just
1,000 subs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But, for anybody
He's
else,
say when I get past 1,000 subs, you can have a theme song.
When I get to 1,000 subs, you can all theme songs.
Oh.
I'd be like, yo, man, I give you a Hungar shirt.
Give him the one with give him the one I designed.
Guys, I literally offered him cash, and he said not only did he say no, but he turned around and sent Jackie that cool ass hat. So that is the measure of coolness in my book. Just copy Rick, and you can't go wrong.
Before we go any further, I'm not the one that diverted topic.
We're still on. We started
Brian, sorry, Weird World 2. Welcome to the show. Hey, just for the record, everybody except Hungar and Justin, I sent your packages out today. Hungar and Justin, I don't know who I'm sending a book out to.
Just send it all to Hungar.
All right. Yeah. Well, he's already got a copy, so I'd like to get the copies out to people who don't have one.
I don't think he has a copy of that book.
No, if he won last year, he got a copy. And Bo, I know you already have a copy, so I was going to see if you want me to send one to Kevin, or if you think that's kind of not a good idea since he sent you all his Arduin stuff.
No. Well, he sent me his original Arduin stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll work that out later. World War II, you'll get a package on Monday. So will you. Bo, I expect unboxing videos from each of you. They can be private.
Whoa. I don't do unboxing videos.
That's why I said you can do it private, man. I just want to see the look on your face.
I'll definitely plug you through.
You can just hit me up on Discord. I just want to see the look on your face.
I do.
James, what's happening?
That is the weirdest dystopian future you can come up with, James.
Yeah, but that's James L for you guys. Thanks. I think we all needed a good chuckle before we get into this topic.
I watched the classic, an old, what was it? The Enemy Within, I think. It's an old it's an old like 80s sci-fi. And this guy had a crossbow. It's like a post-apocalyptic. This guy had a crossbow and he shoots it to a rock. He shot it in a rock. And then he used the rope that was tied to it to climb up there. And I'm just like, that guy just shot an arrow into a rock.
That's badass.
The physics have changed in the apocalypse.
Welcome to the show, Travis. Welcome to the show, El. Well, let's not confuse dystopian with post-apocalyptic, because that's actually next week. So,
true.
Clarification: dystopian is an imagined or real hellish future.
It's a bad future.
Okay. Nicely played, Hungar. So things like Cyberpunk, even Planet of the Apes, I suppose, would fit. Soylent
Both.
Green, Silent Running, Rollerball,
Logan's Run.
all of those, I think, count. What would you guys say?
Death
Yay or
Race
nay?
2000.
Yep.
The original, not the remake. We don't speak about the remake.
I like the original.
Let's speak about what
I like the
want.
original. I like the first remake.
We need to
Yeah,
kick you.
How about
Shadwo, kick him.
no? I invited him. He's gonna have to transgress a little harder than that. What do you guys think about Logan's Run? Yay or nay?
Absolutely.
No, but Logan.
I gotta watch the TV show again.
A dystopian society would have to have that crushing impact on things like civil rights. Just a sci-fi type totalitarian society.
Mhm.
And I think it really is unarguable. It needs to
We
be.
live in that.
Well, I was going to say if it's something we live in, or if we want to argue that like Star Wars was dystopian because it had child soldiers, but I want it to be, at least for this show, I want it to be obvious. I want it to be so obvious, who the bad guys are and who the good guys are, just because it makes for better escapism, I think.
The best dystopian series ever made is Ender's Game.
Yes.
I haven't seen that one yet. L's on fire tonight. He
You
says
gotta read the books,
dystopian
bro.
is Hollywood and Hasbro. Zardoz is also dystopian. James L. Logan's Run is okay.
So here's a good apocalypse. Well, I don't know if it might be a bit dystopian. Shit, I just fucking went blank. It's the I just went blank. Forget it. Forget what I'm talking.
Alzheimer's disease.
Judge Dredd.
It is,
Judge
man.
Dredd?
Judge
You ain't
Dredd,
lying, brother.
especially the comic, is a really good example.
Yeah.
Where the dread
Hell
would keep
yeah,
Urban.
America, baby.
No, Urban.
I really wish the TV series had gotten off the ground. It got canceled. They're gonna bring Keith Urban back for it too.
Have any of you ever read a little comic book by, I think it's Howard Chaykin, American Flag?
No.
No.
Oh yeah, American flag. Yeah, 80s. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love that comic book. I want to get the entire run. But
What's
I got some things I gotta take care of first.
What's
American
the premise?
flag. It was it Warrior Pope.
He's.
Did you ever see Warrior? Did you ever read Warrior Pope?
No, never even heard of it. Justin, from what I remember, he was like an actor who became the president, and or something like that. He had to do all kinds of crazy shit. It's been so long, I can only remember like a few scenes. It was very kind of like Judge Dredd, but kind of a little higher up the food chain, sort of shenanigans.
Yeah.
But
I love this. I love this James L. Post. Judge Dredd is a utopia compared to a public servant's perspective. Or from a.
I just watched that last night. Actually, the remake with Carl
Keith
Urban. That's a good one.
Or Carl Urban.
That's
yeah.
the good one.
Yeah,
Well,
and
seems
they
like
were going to do a
That's a
TV
good
show with him. They were going to do a TV show with him, but it ran into back
He's not
scenes.
woke enough. He's a little bit too based.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
about 4 years ago, and that's what crushed it. The woke. I wanted to see
This
him
was
going
for
after
you,
the fats.
Brian. Al
Oh,
says, don't
we're
have
going
paint
to
while
speak
streaming.
Utopia.
All painters have short-term memory loss.
We're going to have
Shit. Probably.
utopian thing. This is actually happening in the real world. Sorry.
Yeah.
What's up with this freaking world coin shit I've been hearing about?
They've been going on about that since the 80s. There's always someone
Yeah,
coming out with a.
I just
a
got
world
a,
coin.
I just got some intel from a friend of mine saying the lockdowns are coming again in September. So we can draw from that, or from just a little while ago. The whole story, especially if you look at like the China perspective being welded into your apartments.
I'm putting on my skepticals.
Yeah, I
You know,
got those
we were
on
talking-
too,
we were
and my
talking-
tinfoil cap. It's that. I
we
was
were
mentioning it
talking
earlier
about
on
fascism
James's show.
the other. We're talking about
after the
fascism
show.
the other day, and I have to admit, the first thing a fascist does is take your guns, then stops your freedom of movement,
Not-
your freedom of
not-
speech.
Not in the Reich. In the Reich, he restored ownership of
Reich.
guns. The other way around.
There's no reason to ever limit. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about this. It's too real life for me.
Yeah.
I'll duck down until we get back to
I did not change topics. I am noting that again.
What's up, Cal? Clean up aisle 5. We had a chest burster. Okay. Chinzel, I've decided to become woke in 2024 because it will out the style then, and I am determined to be out of sync. Okay.
when
Go
but
ahead, Bo.
well, so when I think about like a real dystopian future, and what makes like Judge Dredd so good about that is because you have to think about the other aspects of society that touches upon like unemployment and poverty, these great a huge disparity of income and wealth, the things that we talk about when we really talk about like a cyberpunk-esque, and then you take all of the worst elements of it, and mash them all together. And that's what makes, that's the things that we touch on when we talk about a dystopian society. Now, the question I have for the crew is, my question for the group, if you're running a dystopian game, where do you want your players to be? Do you want your players to be on the good guy side or on the bad guy side of things? Which is more fun to play?
Well, depends on what you consider the good guys and the bad guys. I think it's all relative, right?
Especially in a dystopian.
But in dystopia, have you guys watched The Handmaid's Tale? Have you guys watched any of that show?
No.
I watch social Scientologists if I can help it, but yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, but the actual the story on how it actually flipped, how the country actually turned in the way it did, is like eye-opening. It's like, give it a chance, man. Just watch those. If you got politics against the show, that's fine, but watch how it changed, how the country flipped, and how it all turned into this way. It's pretty amazing, and it seems pretty realistic.
If I'm going to read a dystopian book on based on racial politics, I'm going to read the Turner Diaries.
Huh.
Okay.
I'm not with.
Well,
I'm not with him.
Well, they're basically the same book from opposite perspectives.
Gentlemen, one aspect of dystopian futures has got to be the injustice. Somehow it has to be felt by the viewer, the player, etc. The overwhelming sense of injustice for it to really hit home and be, a dystopian as opposed to a pre-apocalyptic, story or game or some such as that. Although I suppose you could sort of lead up to it and play the character through the early stages of, the whatever the actual dystopian future it is you want to present to them at the gaming table.
Blade Runner. A great example of a dystopian book that doesn't delve into specific politics, but it's more of a one shot than a campaign.
Is it really dystopian though? It's almost like it's just a decline. I don't know if it's dystopian. I think it's just the decline.
That is dystopian.
Humans on Earth, basically. No, dystopian means just like everything's turned to shit and it ain't getting any better. I think Blade Runner is just a reflection of Blade Runner. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, because when you get into Blade Runner is when you get into the second Blade Runner movie, you see how much worse everything's gotten.
Yeah, even if you just read the short story, like they're all having to have fake animals to help rebuild the biosphere.
That's not dystopian. It's just because it's the decline of everything. It's just a decline. It's not the destruction of
that. Things have already been destroyed. Like the environment is already gone in Blade Runner, right? Like,
yeah, but they're still surviving. They're still maintaining. It's not like there's no opportunity. I don't know. There's a fine line between like the evolution of a society in whatever whatever's happened and then like the dystopian, like it's been caught. It's like there's no way to get out of it. You know what I mean? There's, just
it's got the wrong name, right? Total Recall 2070, which was a TV show from the late 90s, early 2000s. They only did one season of it. It's worth watching. It's Blade Runner, right? It's Blade Runner as a series, as continuing events, and that show is completely dystopian. Everything is ruled by corporate oligarchs, and law enforcement's almost worthless. You do what you're told. That world is completely dystopian.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said Blade Runner.
But it depends on where you're claiming your authority is coming from, right? Authority from a corporation is no different than authority from the government if they have the same effects on your day-to-day life.
Well, that's the real definition of fascism.
Well, not really.
Well, yeah, really.
There's more to fascism than corporatism.
Public
That's why they have
service.
different names. Now, if you want to talk Mussolini integrating corporatism when he came out with his original theory, yeah, he did. Because a lot of that was picking from different political systems that were around at the time and taking the good stuff that was working and trying to expel the bad stuff. Was it perfect? No, nothing was. But,
Have any of you guys actually run a dystopian game? Or something you would call that?
Only we played Cyberpunk.
Yeah, if you've played a Cyberpunk game, you've played with the themes, the colors, but maybe not
in my mind, being dystopian is like you're just surviving. There's nothing else. It'd be like, the day after.
That's post-apocalypse.
It would be, I guess that would be post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, dystopian is the opposite of utopian, right?
Yeah. Right. It's more like people don't realize, that they're in the decline or they're in the pre-apocalyptic stages. It's that gray area right before everything goes to crap, when the injustice is on, full swing, and everything is starting to go,
It could also be the rebuilding, though.
Sure, like Hunger Games.
Hunger Games is the rebuilt society after the apocalypse,
but still very dystopian.
Yeah, it's that time on either side of the potential of
apocalypse,
of everything going completely. Well, it's the justification for the power grab.
No, Rifts is post-apocalyptic.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of dystopian governments in Rifts, but by legitimate necessity. You got actual werewolves walking around.
Right. The apocalypse has happened. Very similar to, well, no, not really. I don't know.
You're all sideways, Bo. You've gone sideways on us, Bo.
I've not played enough, excuse me, I have not read enough Shadowrun. Is that dystopian
it's
or
cyberpunk with gargoyles and
I thought that was apocalyptic, like the world gone to shit in Shadowrun.
Yeah, there was something like that, but it's still
like a huge amount of society. There was not less apocalypse in the traditionalist oldest definition of something being unveiled. The springing forth of the magic. But I think it's more dystopian, maybe heading toward an apocalypse, a real apocalypse, as we kind of use the word now, which is like the end of the world and not just, the unveiling of some sort of great truth. So,
that's an interesting thing when you guys think about what would be a good actual apocalypse, like Satan coming back to Earth, regaining or, whatever the biblical aspect is. There any kind of good, like, movies or something like that, or that talks about the religious apocalypse?
Well, we were going to talk about that next week. I want to kind of focus on
Save the topic, bro.
Yeah, because that's a good one. That's a good one because I was almost tempted to do apocalyptic games first, but I kind of think the dystopian leads up to the apocalypse, kind of like in Gamma World. What would the world be like before everything went sideways and you started, having to go through the dark ages and the, mutant animals and plants and all that crazy stuff? What happens before that? How, if you were going to run like a long, a long campaign to show, here's how it's going to, here's how it's going to all go down. Then here's the apocalypse. And then here's what happens afterward. So, are there any systems you would,
I think that,
well, you even
the best
don't even
one I can
have...
think of is. Oh, go ahead.
You go. I see.
Brian, bringing up Soylent Green is like the perfect dystopian. The world is dying. It's not quite dead, but it's getting there. And then people are trying to do whatever they can, good or bad. Lying about the seas. The seas are all dead now. They're trying to feed people. The only way they can is with other people. So it's like, we were talking about the road the other day. I think that would be apocalyptic because everything's already gone to shit. It's just after the turn.
Isn't that a plague and apocalypse?
Oh, you gotta watch the road,
apocalypse.
Dude.
It's been.
Hell
I
brings
cannot
up a
get
great
into
one.
There was a war, right?
The idiocracy. Great. That's absolutely 100%.
So the road isn't nuclear. It's like environmental. Like the Earth is dying, is dead, and it's just that slow decline. And it's just everybody's surviving the best way they can. It's a heart-wrenching movie.
Yeah.
A lot of zombie movies, a lot of the Dawn of the Dead and things like that. Nice, Hungar. A lot of them for me are pre.
His camera went sideways.
I just watched all the Max Headroom. Like the TV show. Did you guys ever watch that back in the 80s?
Really?
That's
I've
like
seen
a dystopian.
Yeah. That would be because there's like the overreach of the cable. The BBC was what it was originally based on.
The BBC one. Yeah.
Well, that's what it was originally based on, right? Because it was originally a British.
Yeah, there was like a short. Yeah, like a short movie.
Yeah,
because one of these days I would like to run like an Earth, here's Earth, like maybe a top secret campaign that leads into something that eventually goes to like Twilight 2000, and then from there you hit like Gamma World.
Well,
that's what I was going to say. Just do a Twilight 2000 type game that leads into something like Six String Samurai, Gamma World.
Would you consider Twilight 2000 dystopian or apocalyptic?
I would consider it apocalyptic. Yeah.
I would too.
Post-apocalyptic. Yeah. Now, I was going to say, you could also play around with like dystopian moments in history, like the missile crisis.
James, that's hilarious.
Right? Like, what would have happened if the Russians actually ran the blockade? What kind of authoritarian measures would have been placed in the U.S. beyond the ones that already were?
James O just said something hilarious on chat.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
Yeah, not the current missile crisis.
No. That would be the Ukrainian missile crisis.
Dystopian society as we speak.
Yeah, we do. I mentioned the top of the hour.
Yeah, but I want to save that for the prepper show. I want to kind of try to keep it to gaming.
Like you could get. There's got to be a role playing game about playing in the 50s or the 60s.
Top Secret would be perfect.
I know you guys are into GURP. GURPS has a retro sci-fi source.
I've never played
Atomic,
GURPS.
I think. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's called Atomic GURPS.
Yeah.
Right. Bo's our resident GURPS expert. He would be perfect to answer these questions. I don't know what happened. I just sent him a message.
His camera went sideways and then froze. So
right. It's probably technical difficulties. There are a few games other than that other than GURPS and Top Secret. I think you could even go back as far as like with Weird World War II. The whole concept you could start it as like a semi-historical RPG, and then you take that one little turn from the way it was supposed to go to something different, and then
have
snowball
your group of characters being accused of being commies when they're just like, I don't know, an RPG club.
Well, yeah, in the 40s,
true, dude.
50s, 60s, sure. Or with the way you do your show, you literally started in the 30s or the 40s, and something changes. Games like Mutant Chronicles and what's the other one?
I would like to see, like, I've been toying with the idea of writing a series of short stories where the Project Venona was never kept under the wraps. You know Project Venona?
No.
So when the list of names that McCarthy put forward, right? All those people were actually commie spies, and your government knew about it, but kept it classified under Project Venona. So, like, what if that was made public, and that kind of mentality just grew instead of being shut down? Right? That's one little thing. The declassification of one program 30 years earlier. That would be an interesting story to work with.
Even what was the game? Turnip, I think.
That would be post-apocalypse Turnip 28, where everyone gets their heads turned into. There's there's a plague that starts turning everything into like some sort of turnip version.
Isn't that like set in like the 1400s or 1700s?
The French Revolution. The French Revolution.
Oh, okay.
And James has something for you, Brian. Let me go back.
No.
Japan losing swords.
James is buying nuts next week or next month. He hears it's a good WWE.
Oh, yeah, James. Yeah, I got them all, dude. Yeah. So okay, nuts in reference to the Battle of the Battle of the Bulge, where he says nuts at I'm like blanking today, guys, but yeah, it's a good system, man. Now their Weird World War II book, second. Get that, dude. Just get that book. It's got fucking everything.
Yeah, Omanau, they're already doing that in real life.
Yeah.
That's
banning
political parties.
1984 on us. The entire West went 1984 before Justin went there. To get difficulty with sympathy for the USSR is that people were complacent about the reality versus the idealism / message. Yeah. Just watch as they ban political parties to save democracy.
That's the one I was
referring to. Do I have to put on my Zardoz outfit? No, please do not. Unless your wife is into that.
I still put it on. Put it on.
If it's the toga one or the giant head one, if you're gonna put on a giant head, we're okay with that. If you're gonna put on the red speedos and
you gotta
go away. Red speedos and all the way.
No.
James, the James game says.
No, he's so wrong.
The James
is a
Gang says
phenomenal
"Running
song.
for You" is the best.
It's not. It's really good, but I can show you 10 other songs that will never make it to the air that were 10 times better.
If they were that
just
much
saying.
better, they would have made it to the air.
No. What's that?
No.
Hell,
Fire of an Undetermined Origin is a great album.
Fire of Unknown Origin, yeah. It's got great songs on it. The Heavy Metal, the Black and Silver should have been the song on the movie Heavy Metal instead of.
Listen to the whole album again. I think the whole album is a worthy soundtrack to that movie, except for
See, that movie is epic.
Joe
what's her face is still alive.
Joe Crawford,
is still alive. I hate that song, man.
The
Journey song and what's her face?
I'll pull up the album list right now. Music.
So if you
my
were going to run
favorite song from.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just talking about heavy metal. Go ahead.
Meatloaf is better than Cloister Cult. I'm gonna have to
I like Meatloaf. I love Meatloaf. Meatloaf is right up there, and I'm not talking about the food, but a lot of his albums are fucking degenerate. Like, just out there. He has a song about a French Pierre.
Weird.
He has multiple songs about French Pierres. You go listen to Welcome to the Neighborhood, and then try not to blow your brains out. Great album, but very degenerate. And they were going to turn that into a TV show.
Wow.
Jesus.
I'll tell you what, Steely Dan owns all of them.
If you like jazz, yes. But if you're more into heavy metal / rock and roll, Steely Dan is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, they had some poppy sort of songs back in the day, but they were really not rock and roll. Don't get me wrong, I have almost every Steely Dan album.
Best
but they're not what I.
You got it, Al. Omen
now.
I'm still waiting for Barbarella and Flash Gordon for my dystopian scenarios. I've only seen
those are dystopian.
I can't really.
Oh my.
Flash Gordon.
I cannot stand Barbarella, dude.
I don't know, man.
He got it right with the.
There are some of those outfits.
If you think about Flash Gordon,
she looks good.
The injustice is what makes Flash Gordon a dystopian because it doesn't have to always be.
Are you talking about on Mongo? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you think about
stop being humanocentric, you goddamn
pigment.
One of the great dystopians, believe it or not, is Rollerball. If you look in, if you look at what's happening behind the scenes in Rollerball, forget about the games. Like
you ever seen the movie Solar Babies? It's like a B.
Yeah.
B version knockoff of Rollerball.
I have, dude. At the theater.
I love that movie. You know what another dystopian movie would be?
Great.
The Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
Oh my God.
Harley Davidson
You're not wrong, Al.
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man is a dystopian movie.
You're absolutely right. That's
How
a
is
great
that?
one.
What one?
The society's crumbling. There's maniacs running around with guns. There's synthetic drugs all over the streets. People are just getting blown away. It's like you're living in Chicago, man.
There's the side. You want a dystopian role-playing game? It's called Chicago. You just go.
Detroit, more like Detroit.
No, that was 20 years ago.
I've never heard that before.
It's now the apocalypse.
Yeah.
The Warriors, that's a good one.
The Warriors.
That's a good example.
The Warriors.
Come out and play.
That dude was the bad guy in
Canadian
version.
What?
Because for you to have a dystopian situation, it doesn't have to be as ugly as we kind of usually think about it. Things like Logan's Run and of course Rollerball and Equilibrium, everything is pretty on the outside. It's the core that's rotten, the injustice, and even
Well, we can
potentially
get into culturally too. We can talk about Dancing with Wolves.
I've only seen that one once. I kind of think I know where you're going, but elaborate for me.
Well, the decline of the Native Americans as the Civil War rescinded. What happens in the Civil War? They free all the blacks, and then they come over to the West, and they just massacre all the natives. So, but it's after the Civil War, the encroachment of the Western, the whites into the Native American lands, and
You know what? They were living in
If
teepees.
you're looking at it from a Native American point of view, I can see that being the case.
It is.
Um,
It is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's what the movie's
Otherwise,
centered. The movie's centered.
Shadow, even I'm
It's
not
centered
that
with
European-centric.
Even the
sorry,
Westerner
Never
comes
get me
to.
started on Native American
is-
culture because I will just get the whole show shut down.
Yeah.
Manifest Destiny, baby. They were living in
You hater.
tents.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Demolition Man is a post-apocalyptic totalitarian film.
What about who brought it up? Escape from New York, Escape from L.A.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It hadn't quite gotten
Dystopian.
to the apocalypse yet. They were one nuclear war away.
Well,
Especially if you ever read the book of Escape from New York, which I did multiple times back in the day as a kid, because I had that on Laserdisc and I watched that stupid movie so many
I
times.
had Laserdisc too, brother.
Love that movie.
I
Loved
hated
it.
that about the end. I hated that about the end of the second one, but he launched the nukes
Yeah.
from the keypad
Second
thing.
one sucked.
Like the
Yeah.
second one could have been good, but it was just
It wasn't.
too forced.
Avatar was Pocahontas in space.
Yeah.
Now, what about the Postman?
Never seen those. Never had.
The Postman.
Oh,
No,
Postman,
I
great.
love the book. The book
Great
with the
movie.
cult of feminists and the
but
thinking
that's-
machine that was ruling.
Isn't the Postman more a post-apocalyptic kind of like
Post-apocalyptic
the
dystopian
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
Yeah, it's post-apocalyptic. It's for next week.
Yeah, because we're
Yeah,
hitting
it's
some great
probably
stuff, and I don't want to
apocalyptic,
send that episode out
You-
next week.
You gotta like
I
start
kinda-
taking notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone said, I think it was Omen, that Star Trek was dystopian because the automatic translator mistranslated everything. I don't think that's quite there. Although I can actually, from a certain
Yeah.
perspective, being a big
The
fan
Federation-
of capitalism,
Of course it
yeah.
did. The Federation's common greeting was "We come in peace," but they were actually saying "We will assimilate you."
Yeah.
And the Borg were like, "We're just trying to resist the Federation."
Star Trek was just a bunch of hippies in space.
I'd say they're more
Yes.
neoliberal totalitarians.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you will
Yeah,
convert.
absolutely.
You will convert. You will convert. They had an entire series based on that. It was called Deep Space Nine.
Burning for You is greater than Meatloaf's career. I wouldn't even say that, and I'm a big Bush Cole fan. Meatloaf had some good stuff, but
Yeah.
that one song was just. If you really know the band, they're so much harder. They had two sides to them. They had Donald Roser, aka Buck Dharma. Whenever you hear "Don't Fear the Reaper," "Burning for You," that kind of crap, that came out of that guy who tried to. Blue Oyster Cult is where heavy metal married disco, and you got Blue Oyster Cult. Okay, and they had two kids, Buck Dharma, who played the "Burning for You," "Don't Fear the Reaper," "Dancing in the Ruins," the really hip.
Don't Fear the Reaper is a great song. Don't get me wrong.
Right,
Like,
but they're like heavy metal for lighter hearts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas they had songs that just rocked. I mean, just heavy hardcore songs. On the other side of the stage, Godzilla.
I hate
sort of
that
style.
song. I
Me
hate
too.
that song.
Me too.
Like,
Take Me Away.
it's not-
Or,
It's not
or
that
Heavy
it's a
Metal
bad.
Black and Silver, or I Am the Storm. Just where they could. that kind of music and hang out with the likes of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, or even
You're out of your
Motorhead.
mind.
It's not that Godzilla is a bad concept. It's just
No, it's just,
one line. The whole song is 30 seconds long.
right. Whereas the other stuff, like, you know, Don't Fear the Reaper and Burn for You, was more like 70s sort of, you know, barely hard rock.
Yeah.
I
That
love
was good.
Shadow. I like BOC, but comparing them up there on the same same rank as Iron Maiden might be pushing it a little too much.
I was talking about specific songs. If you go and listen to I Am the Storm, Heavy Metal
Yeah.
Black and Silver,
You can do that
those
with
songs
some
are
songs.
as hard as. Maybe
Okay,
not,
certain
you know,
songs.
but you-
Okay, I
Also,
give you that.
I'm not a huge fan of Iron Maiden, so like
the
you can say that
Iron
every
Maiden,
day of the week.
Iron Maiden had a couple of great guitarists. Blue Oyster Cult had one guitarist and four other so-so guitarists. That was the thing. Everybody in Blue Oyster Cult could play like 5 instruments, but they had this one guy who sang Don't Fear the Reaper, who was the editor of Guitar Magazine for like 20 years. Okay, he was phenomenal, but his style wasn't like, you know, the more heavy metal sorts of bands out there at the time.
I'm okay
That
with
was,
that though.
yeah, let's put it this way. Blue Oyster Cult and Styx had almost the exact same setup. They had a brother, two brothers that were bass, guitar, and drummer who did a lot of the writing, but not a lot of the singing. They had a couple of guitars, a keyboard player, and everybody in the band sang.
Now, I just want to make this point. This is,
Oh, yeah,
for me,
metal.
Zero the Panel.
Ooh, that's actually Black Blade. My
Maybe
masters
even
might
like
say,
more
but-
than
That's a
four.
big asterisk next to whatever you're about to say.
No, this is diverting from topic. I did not divert this topic either.
How's it going, Raven? Welcome to the show. Don't Fear the Reaper is for Bill and Ted's sequel. Yeah.
Now, you could
Listen to
say,
Ted.
you
Oh
could
my
say,
God, no.
you could say the future
love
in
Rush
Bill
up
and
until
Ted
the point-
is dystopian because they think the Wild Stallions is a good fucking band.
That is a great point. That is a great point. Yeah,
Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck
that's-
happened to music?
right.
It's like
I mean,
it's like a Don McLean song became all of music
Hey,
instead
now.
of like 4 or 5 guys at the plane crash.
hey, don't be bagging on Don McLean, man. American
He
Pie
has
is a
one
national
song.
treasure of-
You ever listen to
No,
anything
Starry-
else that
Starry
guy
Night.
wrote?
Starry Night.
Okay, Starry Night's good. But if you start
we just
talking to
lost
me
the
about
half
Vincent,
show, man.
I'm
What's
gonna
going on
ask
here?
you where your rainbow flag is.
Repeat that. I'm sorry. I only heard rainbow flag, and then my
If you
brain
start
started
talking to me
boiling.
about Vincent, I'm gonna ask you where your rainbow flag is because there's another song.
Oh yeah,
on that.
no worries about that. Get your ass back in here, Hungar, and bring Bo with you.
Hey guys, I'll bow out. I'm just painting. Let you guys.
No.
Maybe somebody
Leave me
else,
here
maybe
alone with
Owen.
Justin. What kind of friend is that, man?
Okay.
Whoa,
all right.
man.
Actually,
I
wanna
stayed
do-
on topic.
I know. Amazing. I know, Brian. For the most part, you run what, like Third or Pathfinder for most of your RPGs, right?
Yeah. First edition Pathfinder
And-
and 3.5.
Have you tried any other RPGs?
Oh yeah, I've tried everything, dude. I'm a gaming
Okay.
or I'll pretty much play. I won't buy everything, but I'll play everything.
Yeah, that's my policy too.
Yeah. There's just too much to buy, and the big thing with me is like, it's one thing like like Bo and like Omen, they like to buy like rule books to like read them and like the backgrounds, and that's cool. You read that stuff and buy that stuff for like reference materials. You buy it for like mechanic ideas or background ideas. But yeah, I like to play things, and then that's kind of what I do instead of buying the books. I'll just play it, And if it has something interesting in it, I might buy the book just to read more into it. But yeah, I'm not much of a buy. I don't have a lot of money, man, so that's why I don't do that.
If you were
The money in
I
space.
find that,
This is a lyric to a
find that
song,
weird that
but I can't place it.
I find that kind of weird that you're more of a, you know, like a D&D fantasy guy when it comes to role play, but everything else is like WW2 War. Have you never found an RPG that covers like the sort of World War II intrigue that you could run?
In my opinion, role playing mechanics do not work for modern warfare. I mean, modern warfare, like guns and, you know, whatever, are just too powerful to actually have parties survive an encounter with a shootout. If you get shot, you're more likely dead in reality. And I can get past people hitting each other with like sticks and swords and they got armor, and it's fantasy, it's make believe. But when you insert like, you know, machine guns and grenades, and it turns into like a first person shooter. And it just doesn't seem realistic, and it loses me. The mechanics of trying to survive a shootout is just ridiculous. You get shot, you're going down, you're dead. So it leads to very limiting role playing, because when you actually get into the engagement, you know, if you're not the first to shoot, you're probably dead.
I was kind of surprised though, because you know, I've seen your games where you have like supers, okay? And your supers aren't all that super. You know what I mean? I can see where you maybe get into a game that allows for a little bit, you know, a little bit of super, not too much, but you know, to help mitigate exactly what you're talking about. Because I totally agree. I think guns are way. There's a reason why we stopped using everything else, and now everybody. It's all guns, you know what I mean? Because a sword can't do what a gun can, even a bow and arrow. Sorry, Connell. No, you can't do what you can do. You can get one good shot with a bow and arrow.
I don't allow any. In my fantasy, I don't allow any kind of firearms, any kind of cannon, any kind of like, you know, muskets.
Do pirate games?
You can have crossbows. Do what?
How do you do pirate games without cannonballs?
Ballista and catapults.
Catapults and trebuchets and
what, you telling me that they didn't have pirates out there running around? The Romans were famous for having ballista.
There's a reason why the term ramming speed exists.
Great fire.
That's true.
I know, but it's not the same for me. When I think pirates, I think flintlocks and sabers.
I see early like blunderbusts.
What I mean, the Romans ruled the seas. You know why? They put a gangplank on their ship. That's it. They used they brought their infantry, their badass infantry, onto the boats, and then they rammed the boats into the other boats, and their infantry used their infantry tactics to destroy the naval crews. That's how the Romans ruled the seas. It wasn't by their sailing abilities.
I get it, Omen, but you know, we haven't had a war like that in a long time, and I hope we don't. But you know, it can happen, you know, in short order.
And that's another thing, you know, what's like what's really sobering is when you read about like these historical conflicts and stuff, the death you know, ratios of, I shouldn't say like Onyx and stuff, you would think that the death tolls would be so much higher, but they're not. They're relatively low, and it all comes down to the morale.
Skirmishes.
These days,
so what happens even when you get into the big? Well, that's another thing. You're right. Is because what happens is, like, as we get more modern, our death are in modern societies,
modern weapons,
first world, you know,
I know from the
the death rate is low because we have medical science.
Yeah, well,
no, I haven't found a mechanic that
we're not throwing armies at each other anymore. We're throwing like 4-man units at
it's more
a corner
skirmish
store.
and like
Yeah.
like surgical strikes instead of just massive. Yeah.
But no, I think it was over on James's stream. We're all talking about Twilight 2000, and I suggested, you'd have those death tolls, but if the thing you were playing, that group you were playing, was actually the forerunner for a larger caravan, you'd be getting reinforcements for your deaths from that, right? Because
and that's true.
He was wondering where your community was, but if you were like, say, 1,000 people moving in a caravan across the country, and your bandit, your game group was the forerunners, the scouts, the path clearers, or whatever.
Twilight 2000, I played Twilight 2000 extensively, and it is a skirmish game.
Yeah,
it's not.
But like, if you wanted to make it a role playing game, right? If you wanted
it's a role playing
to make it,
it's a role playing. But if when you wanted play it is very skirmish.
Yeah, but if you wanted, like, Billy just lost his character in a gunfight, what's he going to do next week or later on? Well, call the caravan and get him a recruit, right? But pull someone from
the back, and you're right, and it usually turned out, and Twilight 2000 was really mission based a lot too,
which would make sense if you're looking for more canned goods for the caravan, or a new fuel source, or a boat.
Someone's got their speakers on.
You good?
You got your speakers on, Bo?
Yeah,
I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
I muted Bo just to test the theory, and apparently Bo's got 2 devices on, I think, giving us the echo.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna unmute Bo just to.
Bo, they were. Are you muted, Bo?
No.
Do you have 2 devices on at the same
time? You
No.
have headphones?
Echo.
Batman. Someone else said it.
Man, you got a big titty.
Why'd you have to say it twice?
I didn't.
Oh.
No, but Bo, they were asking about. They have a GURPS. Don't they have an atomic GURP?
What's in GURPS?
1950s era.
And there's like an atomic source book, like the 1950s.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Hold on a second. There's one. I'm afraid if I open up another window, I'll close. There's like an Atomic Monsters in the 3rd edition, sort of a 1950s type horror,
Yeah.
But the third edition basically had everything. You can't name it. They even had a lot of exclusive IP. There was GURPS Vampire the Masquerade. There was GURPS Traveler. There was GURPS Conan the Barbarian. So
yeah, GURPS has pretty much everything.
And I use a lot of it in my game.
So real quick,
I have the GURPS World War II stuff.
And weird World War II stuff.
Yeah, I got that one too.
There's 6 3rd edition World War II books.
One of the cool things. Is it?
Now we lost him. Now we lost.
Yeah, the echo.
Let me see if that's me. I only have one window open. One cool thing about the World War II GURPS is that they have they have the cost. Everything that like a B-17, how much a B-17 cost, and that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what use, like, because I don't see playing a government administrator in a role playing game. So why would you need to know the cost of a B anything?
It's just interesting. And let me tell you why. And the reason why is because it'll tell you the rarity of the thing. If a thing costs like 200 million Reichsmarks, you'll have one of those. So with that'll show, it kind of be like a means to show what's rare and what isn't rare.
Every time I mute you, the echo goes away. I don't know what's going on.
Do you have the YouTube tab muted?
I don't have the YouTube tab open.
Do you have headphones?
All right.
It's okay if they're pink, man. It's all good.
Yeah. I won't come on to you if they have bunny ears.
Come back, Bo, as soon as you can. Try the auto echo cancellation on the settings.
Oh, is there something
Right.
like
Remember the play test that I invited you to? We want to specifically address the firearms dilemma you were talking about, because I agree.
Did you send?
For the most part,
I ain't did anything.
I haven't sent it yet. No, it's. But I invited you a while ago through a third party to get you in for your input on it, because I've always thought that firearms just, in certain games, like if you brought it into any sort of class and level sort of base game, giving your firearms a couple of D6 damage is not how it works. You hit a guy with 100 hit points for 3d6 from a firearm, and he just keeps coming. That's I know that happens in real life, but
I mean, if you put a damage die on a, like, let's just say it's a rifle. Let's say it's a 7.62 rifle. The damage roll for that would be like 2d100 or some shit. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with that.
So powerful.
So many people. Yeah. It's not just that. It's the penetration that goes beyond what most other weapons do, because unless you literally skewer somebody with a sword, and if you did that, that's usually considered a critical hit. And
but I was watching this thing the other day where they were talking about a fencing duel, and this guy got his heart literally cut in half during the duel and won the duel because he kept fighting, and then keeled over because his heart was cut in half.
I know, but apparently, in some of our major engagements with rifles, nobody had any luck or fatigue. They got hit and they just dropped. One shot, goodbye. I know it's really hard to come up with a perfect system, but there are those of us out there trying to make it, playable, but at the same time, not everything's just, a D6 or 2 and call it a day.
It just, because you don't want to dumb it down and it loses the cool. It's like, hey, I got this awesome, M60, but every time I roll a hit, it's only D20 damage. It's just like, why even have it? Why, it doesn't make any sense. It's not realistic. So
it's on the same scale as your rapier.
Yeah. It's like, what? And the armor's not going to protect from a bullet.
I totally understand. But that was usually, very young, very inexperienced shooters versus, you take a special ops team. You take a Black Ops team, it's one shot, one kill. I don't care how many hit points you had because they shot you in the back of the head or I shot you in the throat or in the chest, center mass, and that was it.
I even tried the mechanic where firearms. Yeah, I mean, I even tried the mechanic where firearms always cause crits, and it still didn't work.
Yeah,
right.
You're not sending out your Imperial Guardsmen to do an assassin's job, right?
Right.
So, that's the skill level you're talking about, or even a space marine or whatever. You know, you're playing in a role playing game, the elite unit, or at least one that's taking time and patience, not just blasting from a trench.
Right, and even with the sniper, 1 per 2 shots. That's not any of the snipers I know, but even if that's the case, the one time that they hit, it's over. You know what I mean? Because it's always a freaking crit, and having every firearm do just a crit automatically does not wash in my thinking pattern either.
Even if your role playing character was guaranteed a hit out of every 5 shots, it's doing better damage than what most games can handle or make feel.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that?
And I don't want to just
humility,
be relegated to nothing but fantasy games for the rest of my life. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
I'm kind of burnt on fantasy. So there's got to be something.
Listen, guys, I'll put this to you guys. Stop playing modern role-playing games. Start wargaming. Come up. There's mechanics out there that you can role play. Like in my system, I mean, you can role play with just like morale checks or leadership checks and stuff. But you're still playing.
That doesn't get into the discussions and the persuasion. And
that's the thing.
It can.
Yeah. It's just who you're playing with. It's like a group of Space Marines around a corner and they're searching for some chaos cultists, and you run into a civilian, and the Space Marine's morale, his leadership is so high, he comes up to civilian, give me your where is this location, and
yeah, you can add those stats.
They fail their leadership because it's so low, or shit like that. You just
you got your box.
All you got to do is add to it, man.
You got your box of tactical marines. You just name them all and
there
give them.
There are some great RPGs out there, like Traveler, where literally nobody has more than on a high average 45 hit points, and your guns and even your blades are doing 2, 3, 4, 5d6, and that you get hit with a broadsword, you're going down. You get hit with a freaking small caliber handgun, you're still probably going down. You might not be dead, but you're not getting back up to fight.
Mm-hmm.
The danger with that too is like you're not going to. The thing is that you got to find that balance, because seriously, if you want to bring people into your role playing games, you want to foster their ability to have characters that last more than 2 engagements, because they want to create this awesome character, have this great story. But when you're talking with mechanics that are so lethal, right? Then they're never going to get further than like one event, one like skirmish or 1, 2 or 3 skirmishes.
I think that's why.
It also depends on the power level of your opponents. If they're if you're playing the great dystopian film RoboCop, you're not playing as Murphy, Alex Murphy.
Right.
You're playing as generic OCP employed police officer, Central City police officer or whatever. So yeah, if you had 4 players around a table, not including the game master, playing 2 squad cars designated to a 14 block area, right? That would make sense.
See, Omen, here's the problem with that argument. There is no such thing as luck damage or fatigue damage, where the DM says, all right, you just took 30 points of luck. You just took 20 points of fatigue for whatever. It's only, I know you could, and if you did that, then that would, for me, make more sense that somebody with 100 hit points,
I would see luck being rewarded more as one of those chits or something, one of those mechanics.
Right. That's
a mechanic that I
done.
use in my role playing. One of the things I use in my mechanics is when I role play is you're talking about luck and this whatever little bonuses that you may get. I do this usually because I have a lot of females that play with me. I say if you dress like your character, I'll give you like D20 or depending on what level of like how in depth you get into the game.
I dare you to buy a bottle of Viagra and have all your female players come to the table.
No, but seriously, it's like,
so like I want to see
I think I talked about that. Like if the bard actually sings, they'll get like a pool of dice. They roll at the beginning of the game, and then they can like put to their die rolls or something like that. It's just a little thing like that. You can get away from like luck, and you can get away from like the GM being. It's still on them to like, come to the table like you're a barbarian, and Hungar's wearing nothing but a loincloth. I'm like, Hungar, D100, brother, extra bonus points, man. You just use it to your dice pool for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
whatever you roll is what you get for your dice pool.
Mike Tyson says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Absolutely. Back to what Alvin was saying. I've never seen, and mind you, I've played Third Edition. I played Pathfinder. I played AD&D and all the previous D&Ds. I have never seen anywhere in any of those rules where the players reduce hit points because of a luck or a fatigue factor, but they take damage all day long, heal it up with a potion or a spell, and go about their business. If these things are luck and fatigue and stamina, then you should, during the middle of a combat, the GM should say, okay, well, you've been fighting for 4 rounds, subtract, 18 hit points of fatigue. Or you're in the haunted forest, I want you all to take 15 points of luck damage off your hit points. If it's that, it's got to be, you've got to work both ways. Because for the most part, in every fantasy game I've ever been in,
I just want to say one thing before you go on.
Setting or a sci-fi setting, you can get away with that because it's not realistic. I mean, it can be realistic, but it's in a fantastical environment. But when you're stuck in like I'm Fallujah, I'm a Marine in Fallujah. All that kind of stuff, all that nuances and the mechanics just go out the window.
Oh.
Right. That's why I think so many modern, even, let's go World War II on up. Every game that's in a genre in that sort of time period, all the way to sci-fi, includes things that make you beyond a normal human from external sources that aren't going up levels. They're armor, equipment, superpowers, psionic, cybernetic, things like that. Yeah. Right.
Two things. L, do you have a problem with the bondage wolf? I just want to say that. And how is this a dystopian topic?
Because for the most part, those games are hard to play because you have to add this extra element in it. RoboCop. Okay, he's got freaking hundreds of hit points in armor. That just make him just walk through it.
Like I said
in Blade Runner, the replicants all were genetically engineered, so the fact they could take these hits, whereas Decker, he was burnt, by the end of the show, the end of the movie, on his like last hit point, but everybody else was superior.
If I was playing a RoboCop game, which I'm down to, we get 4 players, 2 squad cars, and a GM.
I want a Barrett 50 cal. That's
I'm down to that.
My weapon.
no one can be playing RoboCop. That's the first thing. We're cops,
right?
There's normal freaking cops.
Guys, I'm gonna bail.
Yeah, you got nothing.
Sure?
Yeah, I got some stuff I got to take care of.
Okay, party on, man.
All right, it was good having you here. I will see you tomorrow or Monday.
Yes.
Have a good weekend, buddy.
Yeah, definitely tomorrow or Monday. Or probably later.
That's kind of what I was trying to get to with the dystopian. If you run just the average person, it's hard to come up with a system to do this without, putting the characters themselves in a physical position where they're kind of, at least in combat, not going to be affected by, the other elements of that particular kind of world.
And there's a characteristic that I've always thought in these dystopians and even like apocalyptic, it's like the movies and stuff. You have all these young people, athletic people, and it's just like, how did they get to that point? If there was like, let's say like the Road Warrior, right? You have all these like young, road warriors out there in the wastelands and whatever. Like, how the hell did that even happen? I mean, how did they even survive as children? Well, no, but that's the thing. It's like if you're talking about the complete collapse, you're not talking a couple years where they're still young and virile. You're talking about a slow decline, and then their age is going up and the decline is going down. So it's like you have all these like young people. How are they even?
Which is the plausible
being
way?
born?
Like,
how are they?
Well,
I mean, if you have like an instant if there's an instant zombie apocalypse, boom. You got kids running around, it's happening.
All the fat ones get bit first, right? You and I are being zombies, and
all the kids are dead.
Shadow
Right.
there's
all the babies are
getting eaten by his groundskeeper.
But the only
but this goes along with what you're saying, Shadow. It's like the people who are at the point when you play the game are enhanced in some reason because they've survived that long.
Or they have some basic societal based training, right? Like the RoboCop game. Go back to that analogy. We would be playing cops, right? Because this is the perfect dystopian society.
Right. Man, with Alien, I think with the Alien game, etc. I don't think anybody's ever going to make it through 10 games. One character, 10 games. Okay, without just playing to the hilt, you know what I mean? And being the only guy after several total party kills.
Or you know what they could have done?
You know what I mean?
They had weapons. They had firearms on the ship, on the Nostromo. They had firearms, but they didn't use them for whatever reason. If you read Dan O'Bannon's actual thing, if you even listen to like the story, they're armed when they go check out the spaceship, but they don't use firearms in the ship because bullets shooting through the hole and stuff. So that's why they're using little flamethrowers and little zing.
Right. Because
so
even in Traveler,
in a lower tech.
Right. Like even in Traveler, if it's a heavy combat game, people are going to be dying left and right. I mean, you're not going to have a Traveler character survive 10 games where there's heavy combat in each and every game. Unlike a fantasy game where every session you're probably going to have some combat that would literally take out characters from any other system, but because of the accumulation of more and more hit points, because that's the way those games always are. Whereas there's some games out there where
you have to have the sustainability of the characters, or like you put all this legwork for a month of just kind of social role playing, and the one instance you get into a combat, you're dead. So you're like, well, shit. You're like,
it also depends. Like going back, because we're trying to talk about the cops and the stuff like that, right? The gunfire. If you're playing the titular RoboCop game, every combat doesn't actually mean the person that you have a gun, and your goal is to not shoot the person while capturing them, right? Because you're a cop,
and that's like you're bringing the tech lower because
side,
you have to follow the rules.
The opposite side might just have a switchblade knife, or a baseball bat, or a baseball team of kids with bats.
Which is or like nuns with bats.
Or maybe they have a gun, but they're not good with them because they're street punks, right?
Yeah.
So that could be like 90% of your conflicts, and then the one time you get up to the guy that actually knows what he's doing, it's time to get a new partner because one of you is dead.
Right?
Yeah.
So what?
And then you have to keep rolling on your cholesterol check from all the donuts.
Because I can see
there's your fatigue, Sean. Coffee and donuts.
Well, no. That's a great example. If you eat a lot of donuts, you eventually get sectioned out for
Extra
failed.
hit points.
No, you get
Desk
you're
job.
more likely to get your character removed from the game for failing fitness than getting shot.
Physical, yeah.
Unless it was like a 1960s through 80s cop movie, and then you just
We're
stay
talking
until you're
RoboCop.
retired.
We're talking RoboCop here, okay?
Right? No. I get it. I'm just talking about cops in general because in a lot of dystopian situations, you could throw in armor, high tech armor without much issue, and that can go a really really long way.
Well,
If you're armored, against the things that you're going to be going up against, that'll allow you to keep playing your character and not just one shot you're out or one shot you're permanently so messed up that you need cybernetic replacements, which in a dystopian
RoboCop
situation.
Yeah.
RoboCop.
Cybernetic.
Yeah.
I was watching
RoboCop
before the
like,
show.
fuck,
I was
did you
watching
didn't know
Outland. Have you
cybernetics?
seen Outland?
Outland, the space
Outland
station
with
one.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I've seen it only once.
Oh, you should watch it again. It's well worth it.
I know my list is getting ever longer. Now is Outland a dystopian or just hardcore, hard science?
It's
probably hard
both.
Science.
I'd say it's both because the corporation is forcing the miners to take drugs to keep them working 30-hour shifts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they're going psychotic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other ways and other systems that you could play a literal dystopian game without it being, more or less, a series of one shots, or, you better roll up like 5 characters, and, kind of a funnel situation.
That's the thing.
We'll see what.
I have no problem with the potentiality of needing a new character. I just don't want it to be guaranteed. Right.
That's exactly my point. That's not the essence of a campaign role-playing style situation. And I played a lot of science fiction games, but to be honest, the ones that last the longest have always been like superhero or sci-fi with a lot of different things that would make your character, somebody who could go toe-to-toe with a 10th level paladin. You know what I mean? Use the same rules. Take your sci-fi character and a 10th level paladin. Why is the paladin always going to survive up against a traveler character or a Star Frontiers character or things like that? Why is the fantasy genre, so okay?
Seriously, I think this is why Shauner calls me a dumb fuck or whatever, because I insist that yes, okay. Some mechanics work better for some games and genres, but at the end of the day, it's not the type of dice you're rolling, it's the way you're describing the outcome. What's the difference between a fireball and a bullet? The way you describe it.
It's true.
Not the type of dice you're rolling.
But why, Omen? Why is that? Why would dystopian be that
maybe
way
a grenade
when we know the middle when the Middle Ages or a fantasy situation, does the magic in the world just permeate everything, and every adventuring character just gobs more hit points and can take 10 times more damage than any other genre?
Yes. From everything I hear about the Forgotten Realms, these days, there's no reason why your barbarian can't learn Fireball.
No. Why can fantasy characters take more abuse than any other genre? Why?
Indoctrination.
Other than the fact they just want it to be that way, and that fantasy role-playing games were the first and came up with the rules.
Tradition, probably. Maybe.
Tradition, right? That's what's the difference between tradition and indoctrination? I agree with that, Omen. It's just the
I would like to be able to play there are a lot of movies let's say, dystopian movies where I would like to see the continuation, and I can imagine it going on for a long period of time. The Logan's Run TV show, that was a dystopian world where
Jeremiah. You ever
after,
watched Jeremiah?
yeah, I've seen that one
Oh
too.
yeah, that was pretty
I
good.
know there's,
Jeremiah was
I
good.
know there's plot armor and things like that, but I think Jeremiah was post-apocalyptic.
Jericho.
Yeah, Jericho was also
and-
one that was in the same
So,
vein.
okay,
That's the one I was
a great
thinking of.
point.
Yeah.
Okay, should
Both the
we
shows.
insist that all fantasy role-playing games tone down the hit points? You know, so they're just as squishy, or is there a way we can just make a system where everybody, you know, without going into GURPS, because I like that system, but I haven't seen it, you know, outside of the game we're playing in Omen, where, you know, you could run a fantasy character or a superhero or, you know, something else where the characters are big and beefy and strong and have all kinds of, you know, cool stuff besides just skills. I think there should be a happy medium between, you know, your 100-point 10th level characters that just walk through most average, you know, street fights versus every other, you know, science fiction or modern day game where one fight and you're probably retiring that character because of permanent injuries. Because I do think that you could play science fiction and modern with leveling up or you know, continued campaigns that would be interesting. There were a lot of TV shows like Third Wave and War of the Worlds back in the 80s where the characters would get beat up and stuff like that.
Yeah. But also at the same time,
but yet-
they're not
but yet
getting
they-
shot in the face every episode. And
Right.
a
right.
lot
But
of
they
games
did
are the bad guys have to be shooting you in the face every episode, or it's not fun. And I personally don't like that. But you know what I mean? Like there has to be there has to be a big bad.
That is a good point, Omen, because I do agree. I would rather play a more pulpy sci-fi, you know, like a Buck Rogers or The Shadow or Doc Savage versus, you know, Alien. You know, Alien was great, but I don't think it really makes for a good long-term sci-fi campaign.
I think Alien
Nor
is
does
a good climax event, right? Like it's a good
like
end
the ending,
mission.
yeah.
It's not the weekly episode. It's the we're taking the weekend
It's the
and
end of the story.
we're doing the big boss or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We're not hitting a bunch of henchmen on the way. Right? Like if we
Right,
go
so-
back to the
so-
RoboCop analogy, the alien version of the story would be eventually going into OCP and dealing with whatever freak monster that they're hiding, right? It's dealing with the nuke
whole
manufacturer, not the
this whole discussion
distributors.
with Omen makes me think that, in fact, every fantasy role-playing
I really
game
want to play
I've
this
only played.
RoboCop game now.
It doesn't sound bad. You do it. I'll make up a character. It makes me think that every fantasy role-playing game. I'm gonna leave Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing out of the equation and Arduin. That they're all broken and that characters should only be, you know, not limited in power, but limited in, you know, how many times you can hit them with a sword before they fall down and don't get back up.
Well,
You know what I mean? A cap on hit points at the very least to make it more, you know, otherwise, you know, you're only going to get players who want to play these power trip games of fantasy role play where the thief has got 117 hit points at like 12th level and, you know, can pretty much kick the crap out of any Green Beret using the same rules.
Also, I'm listening to James and Hungar describe their Warhammer Fantasy game, and it looks like their party is avoiding conflict as much as possible. They're actually doing the role play part,
right?
Which,
and that's
you know,
fantastic and commendable.
But
how many
I would
people
play that way
in the masses want to do that? Most people in the hobby don't want to play that way.
Like that's like my whole example of conflict with the ongoing RoboCop analogy is talking about not having those super intense conflicts, because that's not the game. That's a war game.
I'm
Oh,
going
man.
to think that we're looking at two different things. I think that we need to,
Yeah.
to clarify, because you're trying to use D&D, which really once you get past the first 3 levels, which are kind of squishy anyway. If you play level 1 through 3, your characters aren't generally going to survive very long. Level 3, you start saying, okay, I can start taking a couple of hits. But before then, but I mean, they're really trying to mimic the mythology of a lot of the, the stuff that we grew up with, the Aeneid, Hercules, Jason, Argonauts and stuff.
Couldn't a lot of these other games, say the same, that they're mimicking comic books, pulp novels, TV shows and movies that are also fictional, and I hate to quote genre, but also fantasy, just with a different flavor.
Well, I'm not saying they can't.
Omen mentioned pulp, right?
Yeah, pulp.
Well,
pulp,
talk like, did you guys read the Destroyer? Remo Williams could dodge bullets. That's why he survives, is because he's got this superhuman ability to dodge bullets.
I mean, if if you get something like Shadowrun, the idea is that you put everything in your favor, and if you get into a direct combat, the players survive usually is they have higher skills than the mooks they're facing. To be fair on that, and then they also have.
I've never played the game, so I'm
not
not really.
I think the average is, if you look at those games, very similar to what we're doing actually in GURPS. We are so much higher than our equivalent mook opponents, but they could still hurt us pretty badly. I think that's what we're kind of looking at. But when you start talking dystopian, the point of dystopian is it's kind of the Blade Runner. Hey, look, I can get killed at any moment, and so you start. And this is the way the players have to look at it. And again, you and I like to do pulp. I want to go out. I want to shoot out with guns. I want to do Firefly. I have a little bit of plot armor. Okay, let's go out. Let's do that. But when you start looking at it like a Call of Cthulhu game for dystopian, it's like, let's think first, and we may never pull our gun out. And if we do, things are going very badly, and someone's probably going down. And I think that's.
Well, what about stories like Equilibrium? The combat in that
dystopian, because
Equilibrium.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shadow.
Well, what are we playing in Equilibrium? Are we playing But see, even in Equilibrium, the characters are like they're super trained, and that's what you have to do. So your players are at that next level.
Awesome?
So when they do the gun kata,
but the thing with dystopian is that we should in dystopian we should start to decline. It's a decline, right, of what was good. So what we should start, instead of things starting to get like stronger and tougher and more human or inhuman, we should start to become more weak and have less access to stuff.
Right, like
our bodies are breaking down because of society.
Well, it depends on how far along that path you go, right?
Well,
right. Look at THX, blah blah blah. Everybody in that movie is just
pod people.
Weak as hell.
Just pod people.
Right.
I found that that's plausible, because I found that over the last few months, I'm nowhere near as strong as I was 2 years ago.
Right,
nowhere near, just because I've been
brother, none of it
lying down all the time.
Well, no. I mean, like for myself,
I stopped using chairs for a year, man.
Well, the whole thing with dystopian is you're trying to do it where the players feel that the entire environment is against them. And it's not just the fact that, in fact, much of sci-fi, and this is what I'm kind of, and I think I actually, Shadow and I feel like this. Part of the reason I loved sci-fi as a kid was it was aspirational. We're working towards stuff, and it's about, you may have dystopian elements, but it's not dystopian. When you read Alien, whatever it is, the players are getting screwed by the powers that be, and if they're lucky, they might pull a little ahead. And you understand this when you play those games. You're like, okay, if I'm going to play Alien and I'm going to do a campaign, I might do 7 adventures, 8 adventures, and maybe 2 or 3 of us will survive at the end. And players, and you know what? And I'm going to bring up a little different point, because we always think about doing these long campaigns. Sometimes, if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do a medium campaign where you have a satisfying end. Okay, and that's the problem. I think that sometimes we're going through with it is modern D&D wants to do. We're going to play every hour of your life. I think that's a problem with us. No, I want in between. But I think if you do a moderate campaign,
I've done it.
But no, I mean, but you do a
It's
moderate
absurd, though.
and you stop, and then you say, you know what? In 5 years, your characters come back, the ones that survive, and the other. I think if you look at it, that's what a lot of sequels do, and that to me is the way that's kind of the game should be. But you did your victory point. Good job. You know, it's okay. We all did Total Recall. We broke Mars, but you know, at no point do we know if things actually got better in most cases. And that's when you play in the second part. Like, what's happened in the next 5 years?
That's why I really like the show I mentioned earlier, Total Recall 2070, because it places both Total Recall and Blade Runner in the same universe, like canonically, which work. But you're not playing any of those characters. You're playing two cops trying to solve a sequence of problems with an overall story.
I'm going to bring this up.
And it's just nothing has gotten better. Nothing is getting better. Well,
I mean, if you look at Call of Cthulhu, all you're really doing is you're going to die. They're still going to win at the end. You're just forestalling things. But sometimes as a player, you're willing to accept it, and you're willing to say, okay, look, my character's going to go insane at a certain point. He will. But let's be
die.
Right. But here's the thing. Most people don't want to play. Well, I can't say that entirely.
And if it's anything like the Call of Cthulhu Choose Your Adventure that Ye Olde Geek is running, it's because I insisted on playing bingo. That's why we died.
Well, look, I played the one that was going into where we were doing the Reign of Terror, and my character survived somehow, amazingly enough, to the very end. He finally got his head chopped off because he couldn't quite escape into the grates. That was the only thing. But
no! I literally got a character killed because I insisted we were playing bingo.
I don't really care.
Oh, really? You did?
But I mean, but no. What I'm trying to say is, do I feel like my character died pointlessly? No, he saved Paris. You know, and that's what some of this comes down to. And when you're playing dystopian, you know what? That's what some of it comes down to. Let's remember all Soylent Green, whether we like it or not, at the end, where he's showing off, but it's people he
probably dies. He probably does not make it.
He
through the
dies.
night.
He ends up in the truck. He's on next week's menu, and everybody's still.
And the thing is,
one of my favorite, another one of my favorite rollerball. I don't think Jonathan E. made it through the week after that. You know what I mean? They picked him up and said,
I gotta watch that again.
Well, but that's not the point. The point is that you exposed everything. Well, let's look at They Live. You know, They Live at the very end where he gets shot and he dies. Yes, but he reveals the aliens. That's what you're really going for in the dystopian is to.
So would you say that dystopians are more along the lines of a Call of Cthulhu game where it's not meant to be played long term?
Well,
no.
Everybody knows that the shit is going down. But there's nothing you can do about it because it's just too big.
Yeah, No. What you're doing is you're forestalling things or you're exposing things, but you're going to die. And when I say long-term campaign, and I know you've done a 25-year. You know what? Most players, everyone talks about 6 sessions or something. It's hard to get everyone in line together. I mean, Brian and I literally live 5 miles apart. Do you know how long it took us to play the Pygmy game? Okay, now try doing that with a bunch of different people.
Several months.
All retired.
Well, see, the thing is I've been in like online, okay, because I don't do it in person right now because it's just impossible. I played a lot of different games in the last year online, okay, but there's never been a chance of anything but fantasy or short-term games that are going to end, like you said, 6-8 sessions, and it doesn't matter unless you're playing fantasy. Everything else has been relegated to 6 to 8 games if you're lucky, and I'm trying to find a solution to being able to, and of course, Bo's game being the exceptions, where I can play some science fiction, but not know that I'm the first time I get shot, it's over. There are a lot of ways to play science fiction or even modern and keep it going.
Well, I'm going to bring this up. It depends on where you're going, and I know we've talked about this. There are certain things that I like that they're doing in there because I do believe that characters are supposed to be special. There people like, well, there's plot armor. To me, you still give characters some plot armor, and I think the best one that's done mechanically is by doing the fate points they have in Warhammer Fantasy. Guess what? you burn a fate point. You only have so many fate points. Once those fate points are gone, good luck. And I think, and I know that
I played in a game that uses something like that mechanic, and it makes it work. But I'm trying to think of a situation other than like my own super high fantasy science fiction game where just about, it's like Marvel Comics, but in space there is no Earth, and every freaking possible, superpower or ability, spells, and all that crap are all available. Kind of like Starfinder. It's like the only thing I can think of where you can play some sci-fi with any longevity whatsoever.
I'm going to bring up a little bit different. I'm going to bring up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different points. Is I think all too often we look at the really high weapons instead of looking at some smaller weapons, because modern armor, if you look at the number of soldiers that have been killed, modern armor will stop up to a 7.62 armor piercing, and you have to assume there's some of that. The other part is, and I know we were talking about hit points and stuff, and that D&D actually says that hit points, there's a little bit of health, which is probably your first 10 hit points is probably health. Everything else is your skill. And it's like, well, you take so much damage. Well, we don't actually say, you know what, you hid behind that tree as they're shooting it, and you're getting peppered by the, by rocks and stuff. And that's why you take 10 damage. Not instead we play, oh, you got hit by this, but you survived it. It's like, no, most of the time you might get skimmed. And that's taking off hit points. And then you finally get tired and you're just like, oh, it's the same thing. You know how this is. Go dig holes for a day and then see how you feel for a week. I mean, you're like, oh, I can barely move, especially as you get old. But that's what it's supposed to represent. It's the old Indiana Jones. Remember when he gets dragged in behind and he's like, where does it hurt? He's like, oh, that hurts. And oh, that hurts,
Yeah.
But
right.
I mean,
You're talking about
There's no mechanic for that. There's never a mechanic for reducing your hit
assumed.
points.
in D&D, that is hit points.
It's a
We don't look at it as hit points,
But you never take them for things except combat or falling. You never take hit point damage except for some sort of physical impact or damage. You never take luck damage or stamina damage during a game to do exactly like you said when you're digging trenches all day. Well, at the end of the day of digging trenches, you're down to 10 hit points of your 90 because it all went to stress and things like
be
that.
fair to that,
Exhaustion, yeah.
there are mechanics in a lot of games where there is like you have to take like let's say Pathfinder's endurance feat. So like you can take that, and when you do journeys like long unscripted journeys, you don't get fatigued. You don't but it's relegated to like a couple sentences in this massive mechanic rule book that there is fatigue and there is like
the problem I think
like a journey.
That's one of the things.
Starvation.
That's one of the things I always go on about the books being too big.
No.
Practical for you to know everything.
Well, the problem is that most people just run it and go for it. If you actually look at, and this is what I kind of like, like Conan has harms. You have vigor and stamina, and I know you've played that. But if you get a harm is permanent, and a harm means you took a lot of. That's one. But I say permanent. It's until you finish up the adventure. But the other one that you look at, and most people get this about D&D, there are fatigue rules that no one reads that specifically drop your levels until you've rested enough. And I that's one of those things that admittedly I didn't read it until like the last year or two. I'm like, oh wow, if you don't sleep for 3 days, you lose like 4 levels or
it's
something.
A lot better than in real life. In real life, you don't sleep for 4 days, you run the risk of death.
Well, no.
I have extreme insomnia. My doctor says, this is one of the things you can run. If you are up for 4 days straight, there is the chance that you could go into.
Yeah. If you're 90 years old.
No,
I mean,
I've been getting these warnings since I was 20, man.
Well, then you have really bad health.
Yeah, it has to do with like your brain shuts down and your organs.
Well, see,
and the next thing you know, your heart, you literally don't realize you're having a heart attack or going into a seizure.
Well, Hell Week does that with the Navy SEALs. I mean, that's
because you're in really good shape. If you're in average shape, it's
okay. But your players aren't that way. If you want to if you want to represent that, you know what you do? You go over to your 0 level character where they have 2 to 7 hit points, and they like die from someone blows on them. I mean that's. But see, we aren't players aren't playing 0 level characters.
You're supposed to be playing like the best people getting into better shape.
Yes. And that's part of where they say luck and stuff. But, it's the way that we've represented as players and DMs to represent everything as an actual hit. Whereas when you actually, like I said, I just read it on page 35 of the player's handbook where it explains what it is. In some cases, it's magical. Some cases, it's skill. Some cases, it's stamina. Some cases, it's luck. And I think that that's a problem that we have of, hey,
there's too many.
In D&D, well, in the D&D, if you actually look at it, it says that after a combat, you have to rest for 1 turn.
Yeah.
It says that.
What is a turn? Define it.
10 minutes is a turn in D&D.
Yeah, so, like...
It specifically says that in the book, but most people don't play with it. That's the problem is
it's just assume that they rest or whatever.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, that can maybe cover the fatigue thing, but what about luck? So you only take luck during damage during combat. There should be things that should sap some of those hit points, because even with the level loss from exertion, if you lose levels, you'll lose hit points. I get that, but there should be other instances, in my opinion, where the DM would be saying, because even in Pathfinder, when you said about the feats that allow you to ignore those things, well then, what about the people that don't have those feats? How many hit points are they taking specifically from doing this manual labor, whether it's combat or otherwise, just from the pure exhaustion?
Well, yeah, it's like I know in Pathfinder, if your characteristics are reduced, like if your strength is reduced, like the number, if you have let's say you have a compound bow that's only you have to be a level 8 strength to use it or whatever it is, right? Well, if you go below that, you can't use that compound bow anymore because you've lost, and you have to degrade all your stats.
Yeah,
degrade all your, and then there are certain
that's
weapons
supposed to simulate exhaustion, though, right?
I'm going to bring up the other point is if you really want to look, we're talking fantasy. If you want to talk about fantasy, go look at Forbidden Lands. And where players, you know what usually kills players almost looking at something? There's combat. But going out and screwing up your sleep and everything, you will die very quickly from a lot of this stuff. And the other point is, we have to remember this, is we're playing a game. Do you want, how do you want your characters to die? Do you want them to die in combat, or do you want them to die because they fell asleep because they lost too many hit points? Which, to be fair, my character actually in Call of Cthulhu, and John always laughs about it, he rolled a 100, which was a critical failure. And my character, and I know this for a fact, is when you're really exhausted, you just fall over and sleep. People forget about this. Yeah. You don't think you fall asleep, and you just go. And admittedly, if you're driving a car, or if you're driving a car, flying a plane, okay, now you're going to crash. Let's be honest. But the rest of it,
you guys have to. You guys have to admit that we're talking about things that are like high level of game playing, playingship.
Yeah.
Now, we've been gaming for 40 years, 30 years, whatever it is.
So
we're like talking about, we've been in the shit, we've experienced all this stuff, and we're wanting more out of what these mechanics can give us, and they can't give it to us. But you got to think the majority of the people walking into role playing was us 30 years ago. Saying, "Oh yeah, that's cool. That allows me to do this." Well, but they'll get there.
They're looking for different things. Well, I'll be honest. Star Frontiers, which I liked the best, was the SF0 Crash and Volturnos. You know what? There was fighting, but guess what? You were more likely to die from. And magma and all this other stuff that comes out of there. And I think that's the problem. If whenever we start looking at these games, I don't want to really. I mean, if I want to play Star Wars and do some of the dystopian stuff, I can do that. But let's be honest, that's like playing Vampire the Masquerade. In case if you're going to do a dystopian world,
without a bunch of hot chicks in college, the pizza.
Yeah. I want to go back to the days where Vampire the Masquerade was played on the street with chicks.
Well, but I mean, but that's what I'm saying is that when you start to look at all this stuff, is you're playing dystopian. Well, guess what? Most of your stuff is going to be political. I mean, the perfect example is, I guess, it's the Blade Runner game. It's really a detective game, very similar to Call of Cthulhu. and you're trying to find out the end, and then only at the climatic part. Which again, if it's climatic, it's just like whenever you're at the end of the big boss. Well, how many players are going to survive the big boss? That's the real question. And sometimes
not all of them should. If you're playing normal people going up against the Nuke Lab from RoboCop or the security detail at OmniCorp, or I'm still on the RoboCop kick for some reason.
Well, I'm going to mention if you look at let's look at Spike from Cowboy Bebop in the last fight.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking at. It's like, okay, we're gonna, but most people don't want to play the normal schmuck. Well, I mean, to be fair, if you want to do that, that's where Alien does fairly well. If you want to do a longer campaign, which they're going to be bringing out the one for Colonial, I want the slow build. I want to be able to go search and say there's something wrong, and you start saying things, and then things are slowly going in there. I don't want an alien every game. One is it reduces the alien to just monster of the week, instead of the real terror, and I think that's part of it. But the other part is there's, how do I want to put this?
Sherlock Holmes.
If you want Pulp Fiction or a pulp style, John Carter. There's a lot of stuff out there. Well, then you make the characters much more survivable. They're not going to die from one hit. Why? Because it ends the game, and it's not very much fun for a lot of people. But it's the same thing when you play the difference between Dark Heresy and you play Rogue Trader. By the time you're playing Rogue Trader, you're like, I am kick-ass, or you're doing this other stuff. The expectation is you're not going to die from everything. But boy, when you do Dark Heresy, it's like you get
might as well just print off those character sheets in a folder and just pull one out every half hour.
Yeah, but I mean, even though they're both set in technically a dystopian universe, most of the time what I found for dystopian is for the players is where do you fit in the social class?
Yeah,
it's much more dystopian when you're poor in the middle of nowhere than when you're a rich Ivy League
you're suffering
person
from it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think the analogy I've been using since it came up has been so good, because you're playing a character that is default got body armor, default has a sidearm, default has an armored vehicle, where 90% of the stuff you're going up against is a guy in a t-shirt with maybe a club, maybe you're outnumbered 3-1, right?
Well, the other part,
a mini boss fight is the two cops going into the variety store with the Little League team.
Well, how many of the games I'm going to mention a little bit different for that's quasi sci-fi is I liked Bright the movie, but if you looked at it, I enjoyed it, but if you actually look at most of the time you're trying to run away from the fight. You're not trying to get into the big fight until the end. But I mean that's what I think that sometimes, especially, and this is I like listening to Sean with Mage's musings. I'm going within a 5e mentality. He said total party kill. So they do it again, total party kill. And it's like, okay, the third time it's total party kill, and by the time they go the fourth time, they're like, there's a hobgoblin. Maybe we want to talk to him first. And the lethality changes the game. And how do I want to put this? If the lethality is really high, then it becomes much more of a social game where combat is looked at as a last resort instead of a first resort. And I think that's part of what goes in. That's why I don't mind. And like you were talking about Outland, I love Outland. To me, if you can be, in fact, I know that in Alien, they recommend watching Outland as part of it because it's the same people worked in special effects in Alien.
Yeah,
Outland.
It's almost in continuity is what's generally believed.
Yeah. So, but I mean, let's be honest. When I played with Brian over there in Pygmies versus Japanese Deep Ones, that was just fun. It was just total off the top. And I don't want. How do I want to put that? I don't. I will say this much. DM James said that Twilight 2000, the new version, is more like what it's representative fast in combat. I haven't played it myself, so I can't say. But I'll take his word because he's actually seen combat. It's an infantryman. So I'm like, okay, but do I really want to do that? Because what did Patton say? War is 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror.
Well, the boredom should be like you should be bored at the beginning of the session and looking forward to being bored at the end of the session, and your boredom time is at home in front of the TV.
Well, the other part is it depends on how you want to do players. How many people want to? Because I just talked to my friend that I was in Iraq with, and we were discussing all the things of the political stuff. Okay, fine. When I was in Afghanistan, they would hit us once a week, but that's not what I really remember. I really remember having to fight over the stupidest crap that I'm not sure players would ever deal with. Like, well, I want the bulldozer, and you're like, what the hell do you want the bulldozer for? Well, I should have the bulldozer. Like, you have to share that damn bulldozer. And then I also remember, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that actually goes on in the middle of war zones. And I'm saying, but how often we actually represent that? It's we want all the action, but sometimes if you want the deeper detail stuff, you really have to go into it and say, why are we going here? A little bit more sci-fi. Look at Predator. Oh, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to kill everybody here. Well, something's off about this. I mean, that's all of a sudden your mission changes. It's not like that you couldn't beat the rebels.
The local village.
Yeah. That village was easy. They were surprised. They were overwhelmed, and everything else. But what's coming after him? The Predator. And the Predator's what's doing. Now, I'm not saying you want to kill off all your players, but that's why I think that sometimes if you build up in those smaller fights for 6 or 10 sessions, and then you have the big fight, and then maybe half of you die, it's like, woo.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, how often do you care? And it's funny, we all know this, the longer your character survives in a very deadly environment, the less likely you are to put him in stupid situations. You're first like, I'll run up, and you're like, well, no, I took him up to 5th level or 6th level. I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. And that was the understanding of, I think, the old D&D as well. It's like, what do? I'm going to bring in my retainers. How many retainers get in?
I don't. The need to like. What happens is, we're talking about 5, game sessions until we get into a big. To do right. Yeah. It takes a certain gamer to do that. You know what I mean? And it's just it's rare to find all those together. Yeah. So you got to speed shit up.
Invariably, people are, all about the combat die rolling or being in combat. A couple of games come to mind, though, Cyberpunk and Judge Dredd, where you could play the dystopian situation or RoboCop as an actual RoboCop or something like that. Because like in Cyberpunk, all the characters have the options of being way better than the average mook, so to speak. And maybe that's the key, is you need to find a game and a system where the players can actually, through whatever kind of plot, armor, or mechanics, be able to survive longer than the average person, being able to take a couple of bullets and limp away, as opposed to just lay there in a puddle, wait for the end. Well, in order to make a sustainable, long-term dystopian type of game. Otherwise, it sounds like you're kind of relegated to a very short campaign, probably punctuated with lots of rolling up of new characters.
It's like that duelist I mentioned earlier, who won the duel but died right afterward because his heart was cut in half. Well, that's a true story.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, but I'm going to bring up the other part is even when you're talking about this, because my friend that I was from Iraq, he had been in Afghanistan. He had been blown off a mountain, rolled. He was on a helicopter. They cut him. They cut the Humvee he was on. The Humvee dropped 100 feet, then rolled down the mountain. He had his leg literally cut up by his ear, and then he had to walk 7 miles out of there. And he's had 50 plus surgeries. And then he was shot several times. He got blown up several times. Is he, what he's doing now? And he's a great guy. And this is where you talk about the traveler stuff. We get the permanent wounds. Now he's on a crutch, and he could barely move his arm when I met him. But
sucks.
Is he going to get into combat again? He's going to avoid combat, but I'll tell you this much: he was an EOD guy. He knew how to do that stuff. It was just like, look, I'm going to avoid combat as much as possible. I'm going to talk my way out of fighting. He's like, I'm 60 years old. I can't do this anymore.
This is the having fun, right? It's not in the moment that you're having fun. It's the ability to say, this one time at band camp, 20 years later.
I
You
mean,
know, even if your
I
character
disagree.
dies,
I
even if your
actually,
character
in
dies in
every
the
game that
climax
I'm
of the
in,
battle,
in every game that I'm in, I'm enjoying the shit out of being in the
yeah.
game.
Well, like,
You know, I appreciate the stories afterwards, but I'm not going to be saying that I wasn't actually having fun in the moment. I'm
well,
always going to.
there's
So,
the difference
I got a question
between like,
for you guys.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever
Yeah.
tried level advancement by time? Let's say, you know,
like
every
you're promoted.
session is a week. Yeah, you
but
like,
see,
yeah, it's like let's say every level that you gain is like 3 months.
Real time
So you play in not in real time, but you play, you know, in game time 3 months, and whatever happens, and then from that 3 months, you just ascertain that you've acquired enough whatever to get bumped up.
Well,
I've done that before, and it works pretty well.
I don't disagree with that. Probably the problem I have with it is all too often is in modern gamers is they go from adventure to adventure where there's no break time. And in reality, when you look at even with TV shows, you're only supposed to do about this long, and then you know a mini campaign. Even if you have a longer story, you have several mini short campaigns. You do that, and guess what? You should be taking off 3 to 6 months between those to represent the fact that there's time going.
Or even if you're playing
and
the example I've been using, RoboCop, like you would
Every time
watch.
you say RoboCop, just use Cyberpunk or Shadowrun. That's what they're based on. No,
Well, no, because I'm picturing the uniforms and the city in my head, and I'm enjoying that more than I would those games.
Cyberpunk and Shadowrun are both that way, and they're not level based; they're skill based.
Yeah.
And the other point is,
but I'm thinking like a police procedural, like Law and Order or something. Those aren't like you watch that episode every week, but they're not like every week. Only a week's gone by between episodes. Sometimes 6 months have gone by. Sometimes a day.
Well, see, I think of the games very similar to 24. You know, we're going to be playing a really short time, and then 6 months or a year later, you go back with the same characters, and there's kind of a new thing, and it may tie in, you know.
Yeah, but maybe not 24 hours. Maybe it's like a weekend.
Is it me though, or are most of these situations assuming that the characters are like front loaded, where they're pretty much set at the beginning, and they're really not going to change much throughout the game because they're so front loaded, like with Cyberpunk or something like that, where you got this kick-ass character, but he's not really going to be going up levels because he's already badass. You know, it's just a matter of survival and play as opposed to going up levels and getting better.
It depends on what you want from your game. And I'm going to mention again, if we talk about Call of Cthulhu, or you even talk about Alien, the assumption is you're going to slowly move your way up. It depends on what level you want to start at. But let's be honest, it's just like first level D&D. Your first level character isn't fighting dragons. He isn't fighting a lot of stuff. He's probably fighting orcs and hobgoblins and giant rats, which we all get tired of. But those are the learning levels. Again, once you've played for long enough, you understand how this works, and then it's better to go up. But those are your learning levels to understand how the game mechanics work, to understand just how lethal the system is. So by the time that players are actually getting up to 5th or 7th level, if they've really learned it, they know a lot of the tricks. They know that they're not going in front, and you start going, okay, what are you going to do? We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I think that's part of the.
That's a bad role player, in my opinion. If you're front loading, if you're deliberately min maxing everything, you're just bad at the game.
Well, how do I want to put this? Is like Call of Cthulhu. Your character will get better.
New is synonymous with bad most of the time.
Most
of the time.
Sometimes I like newer players because newer players will actually act like their character instead of trying to mimic the system. Everyone knocks the new players, but if you get a player that actually wants to play and he's like, well, can I do this? Instead, the players, this was the thing they could play about Pathfinder. Well, I'm limiting myself because this is the optimal move, because this is what I get my bonuses, and this is what, and they said, well, wait a minute, who cares? What are you doing? If I just ask you, what are you doing? And say, you know what? Yeah. That's a good idea. I give you advantage. Or I give you disadvantage. Or sometimes this is what I would do all the time when I DM. Are you sure you want to do that? Because I assume that the players are doing something stupid. And you know what amazes me?
Yes, Regis Philbin was the best DM ever.
Well, no matter how many times you tell a player,
I'm sorry, you reminded me.
No matter how many times you tell a player, are you sure you want to do this? 9 out of 10 times, they'll still say yes, even when it's a really bad idea. But you know what? Is when they do pull it off, it's pretty.
I'm sorry, Omen, how, but that was you said.
Like,
are you sure you want to? That's the first thing that came to mind.
No, I do that all the time.
Here's an example.
Honest, in reality,
You never watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Well, no. I mean, in reality, let's be the characters. Yeah. The players may not know what the characters do, and I'm supposed to act as that person that says, "Hey, look, maybe that's not the best idea." Now, if you're still going to do like, "Hey, maybe that isn't the best idea," maybe putting rocket skates on near the gas station, and while having the while loading up a bunch of grenades, and I'm going to say, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And they're like, "Yeah,
I'll risk it."
All right,
I'll risk it in real life.
So like me and Mel played it. I converted a Octoon Cthulhu module into a role playing or into a tabletop game, and it's like the attack on the Fuhrer train or whatever. But there's a scene where she's in the train and she just killed some guys, and she can hear troops running down the train to respond, right? And her what she wants to do right now is piss all over the fucking Hitler. There's portrait. It was. Are you sure you want to do that? I mean, there's guys. I'm just gonna whiz all over that thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's still offensive, bro.
Suspend your actions to do that, and
it's just that
they're into the character doing their thing.
No, but I mean, as a DM, I'm still trying to say, look, does this make sense as far as your character? If they say yes, go ahead and roll. Good luck. And just like, oh my God, this is going to turn out so badly. But
midstream.
But that's part of the fun of the game sometimes. Okay, if you deserve to die, you deserve to die. In certain cases. But
that still is a one time at Octoon Cthulhu. Well, pissing on a portrait of Hitler, I got shot 3 times in the back of the head.
It can't be that way.
Well, but see, that's the point. Is like you still have a story.
Don't be that stupid.
Well, you know what? I got shot, but guess what? Well, do you guys know how many stupid things soldiers do? And we're all joking about this being in our 50s, but look at how many stupid things we did when we were 18 and 19. Yeah. And somehow we survived. Oh, yeah. And see, I can see Shadow doing this, and yet
jumping on trains.
Playing
taser tag on top of a supermarket.
Yeah. Well,
climbing construction skyscrapers, 8-story, 9-story tall buildings before they were done. In the middle of the night, climbing up on a
fight with the Bandito biker gang.
Yeah.
You know what? But if your father said
other things, I'm not even going to talk about. But yeah.
But see, that's the point of what I want to say is, those first adventures are supposed to be. They're supposed to teach you like, yes, you can start off. Again, it depends on how fast you want to move characters. And I don't disagree with Brian there. It's like, look, this is why when people complain about milestone. I hate milestone. Well, you know what? I would rather do when you finish the adventure, you can go up a level. But guess what? There's going to be 3 to 6 months in between that adventure and the next one. And then you're like, oh, okay. And so it slows down the progress. The other point is players don't become 15th level in how do I want this? They don't become 15th level in 12 or 15 weeks. They become 15th level over like 20 years. And you get that feeling where it's like, okay, now
that could be 20 years in game, not in real life. But you want what's the point of having it happen over a weekend in real life? Like you're not building the stories. You're not taking the time to build the moments that become this one time at band camp. There's no room for those events to develop. So,
but the other part is, like you said, for the events to develop is you can set down the seeds, and then they can start seeing how these things start growing. It's like, the necromancer got away. Well, you know what? You've been looking for him for 6 months, but you haven't found him. Oh, wait a minute. I'm hearing about a small army over there. And then it starts getting worse and worse. And then you find out, it allows you to develop things without feeling that it's just the frantic every episode of, like I said, the difference between 24, the one episode, I'm sorry, the one
The
season,
one day.
yeah, the one day or whatever, which is what most players want to try doing, and then saying, okay, we're going to do 7 seasons of this, and you have had 7 sessions, but they're 7 mini campaigns, whatever you want to call it. Adventure.
Yeah, it could be a session, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I do, guys, in my Pathfinder game. I've got I have a calendar. So everybody's like, they actually live on a calendar, their characters.
You should always have a calendar, bro.
Yeah. So between each adventure, whatever, and you just mark that stuff, and then it's like, you're still suffering from that, the engagement being touched by that, whatever.
Well,
so you're still gonna be.
I think the other part is if you make it.
No,
longer,
I have one coming, bro.
But I mean, if you make it longer, you also can do like, well, what happened to you? Well, the perfect example is, let's look at Luke Skywalker when he had his hand cut off. How much time was between? We don't
know. Months, a year.
But
Indeterminate.
Before he came back over and said, okay, I'm going to go rescue Han Solo. It took time to do that and to organize everything. It also allows the players time to say, okay, what are you going to do in this short downtime? Are you going to make friends? You're going to do this. You're going to start doing
study. You're going to train or whatever.
Well, and I know that Traveler has something, but I think that, and I'm not disagreeing with Shadow. You front load it if your players have been playing the same game for 20 years, you know the mechanics in and out. Then why do you want to play them at the very bottom level for the most part? I'm not saying everyone, but that's what the other part is. I'm going to bring up a little bit different, which is, hey guys, you know what's really cool? Let me give you some pre-gens that are 5th or 6th level to show you the really cool stuff that you can do. And then you start them again at first, so they can kind of like get sucked in where they don't feel like they're crappy. And then you start them crappy and say, this is what level you can aspire to. And you're like, oh, okay. I know we were supposed to be talking about dystopian. I think the real thing is, what level dystopian do we want? And the other part is how much social combat.
Right. Well, that's
why I keep going back to the RoboCop because it's dystopian.
I'm envisioning a game that can go on, as something more than just a couple of sessions and it's over. Let's go on to something new. I'm trying to because this is going to tie in with next week as well, because the same mechanical issues are going to exist in a post-apocalyptic game unless you throw in like Gamma World's mutations and more cybernetics and more weird stuff to allow the players to keep playing without keep having to keep roll up new characters to continue in the story. Because a good dystopian and or apocalyptic game could go on for a long time. We played Gamma World for years and years and years. We also played Cyberpunk and things like that with, the same characters being able to survive because of the things that go beyond just being a normal human with training. You take your best Green Beret, he's gonna pale in comparison to a fully augmented cyborg or wired character or even some other kinds of characters you can come up with. The average dude is just not gonna make it.
Well, look at this scenario. Say there's a drug like Nuke, back to the RoboCop, but it's self-perpetuating. Like it's an algae bloom that just can be produced. It's an unlimited source. And there's an AI that is trading Nuke to Nuke addicts for materials to build Ed 209s that are just going out and conquering things.
I'm going to bring up a little bit.
That's an apocalypse.
Well,
that's just an outright apocalypse until it's destroyed.
I'm going to talk more of what Shadow's talking about here is the Green Beret generally has what? He's going to have 4 years. By the time that they get to like Delta Force, it's 8+ years. Yeah. When they first come in, most of them, and I've talked to some people that I knew that did that, most of them are coming, and don't get me wrong, they're in good health. So, if you go in the military, you're automatically going to be in the top third of healthy adults. I mean, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Plus, you're young, which means that, while we all complain about our knees and our backs and everything else, a 20-year-old is going to do stupid crap, and he's going to be like, yeah, I'll just walk that off. and I think that's part of the sometimes in that. But then the other part I'm going to bring into it is, what are you playing? Is if you want to start off as it doesn't matter what it is. Okay, you're doing the beginning. How long are you going to do this? If you're doing 6 years of training, you're doing 8 years of training. By the time you're about 12, I mean, if you go in for special forces, those guys are real veterans, and at that point, their body starts breaking down. They start becoming trainers at a certain point, or they start becoming, leaders for that. But they're not necessarily the guys that always kick the door down, because you don't want to lose a guy with 20 years of experience doing something, that's like, look, that's a grunt level work. I want this person over here.
Well, we even got to look at how the rank of Master Chief got created. They didn't want to downsize a bunch of fucking chiefs, so they created a whole new rank to keep those guys on the force.
Well, it's the when
What's
you look
the Master Chief? Is that like a game or something?
Master Chief is an E9. It's the same level as a Sergeant Major.
Oh, gotcha.
I thought you were talking about Halo.
Well, that got the term popularized.
But
in common language.
But it was an E9. If most of those guys have been in 20 years, I can tell you much is there, if anyone ever watches what is the movie, a few good, not a few good, We Were Soldiers, and you look at that, that's an old hardened man. But he's going over. He's like, I want
That's
you.
The one with
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson is Hal Moore, and then it's also the.
I was thinking of Rising Sun or Fading Sun or whatever it was.
You're talking Sam. Anyway,
Bruce Willis.
No. I'm talking about Sam.
Tears of the Sun.
Yeah, that one. I was thinking that one. That's why I asked.
Oh, but no, this is the
Sam Neill in that, or not Sam Neill. Sam Elliott. No.
Yeah, Sam Elliott is I believe he's the Master Chief in
the old guy. He just died.
Yeah, in his 90s. I mean, Sergeant Major. Well, if you listen to what's that guy's name? I was listening to him. He became a clinical psychologist, but you listen to all the crap they did, and you're like, he talked about at one point that he fell out of the helicopter and he had to grab onto the tree, and he slid down the tree, breaking branches all the way through. And he somehow survived, and that's what players want to play. They don't want to play the guy that pops out his head, falls off. Even though, which is what NPCs are for, is a guy who forgets to lock into his rope, and he goes down it, and he falls. Yeah. He falls 100 feet, and like we got our first casualty, which is what happened to Black Hawk Down. And once things start going down, they tend to go bad. It's not just one item. Like, well, we can take this one, but it's like, well, this one went down. Then this thing happened. Then this thing happened.
The cascade.
Yeah, and every time I ever hear something, is what are the odds of these all happening together? Well, the problem is that they all seem to happen together, whether you realize it or not. They don't have to happen together.
One wouldn't have been a problem, but this other one happened as well. So it's like the housing crisis in 2009. If one thing had just been left alone, it wouldn't have been a problem. But then another thing was introduced, and the pyramid got knocked over.
They always call it a black swan event, but I always laugh because black swan events seem to happen a lot more often than they want to call. But it's a black swan. Yeah, well, why do black swan events? Well, a perfect example is if you want to talk about modern. And this is the point I think sometimes that we look at as players is we don't do domain level play, because at a certain point is. Okay, guess what? After you've been doing something, I hear Pendragon does this actually pretty good. You have an adventure or whatever, and then you have to, then it becomes winter and you don't go anywhere for a year, and then you start the next summer all over again. And I think that's part of the thing that's coming into it nowadays is players aren't playing it as if it's 20 or 30 years down the road, because as much as we talk about the same characters, at a certain point, it's like, you know what? You've hit a certain level with that character. That character has now become domain level. It just becomes
boring to play.
Well, I'm not saying that. That character has now become domain level play. But guess what? He has retainers. You should be playing those retainers in the same game. And you should be getting those guys, as people start moving up. But we all want to play Star Trek where you're an admiral. Let's be honest. Admirals don't go anywhere for the most part. In modern military, they tend to fly around. But the one time that you do need an admiral, which is you're going to be commanding 7 or 8 ships, but he's not doing the, admirals.
He's not pushing the button to shoot shit.
Yeah, well, exactly. If he's doing that, they're in really bad shape. Okay,
someone's dead.
And I think that's what we as players, it's I want to be in the action. I want to be in the middle of action, and you can do that in some cases if you're trying to play some of the heroes. But notice almost all the heroes die. As much as we talk about it, King Arthur dead. What is it? Lancelot dies.
But they die at that climax moment, and that's what I'm saying. It's okay. It's okay to have your character die at the climax moment. You're still building all those little, like I've been using the American Pie.
That's what it's talking about.
It's a relevant line.
Call of Cthulhu is the perfect dystopian world, is because that shit's out there, and we're all
there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do.
Slow it down.
But except what you can do. So you do what you can do.
Well, that's dystopian, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. It's like you can play a dystopian world in that win at the end. It doesn't win the world back to normal. It just takes you to the next chapter, and then that next chapter could fall to the apocalypse, or you could just keep going. You could we got that. Let's do it one more time, guys. Let's get it going. Maybe your party's reduced because some of them died the last game, and you just get weaker and weaker. But maybe your knowledge is better. You choose your better, whatever.
I'm using the Reign of Terror as a perfect example. We played. We did 2 different groups, which is at the beginning, which admittedly was during the French Revolution. We played before the French Revolution, and then we played 5 years after the French Revolution, and it was very interesting that we played the same characters, and none of us died in the first one. All of us died in the last one. But I can tell you this much: in the first adventure, and I think it took us like 3 sessions per 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And he did have to because players always go off the rails. He had to kind of bring us in. But
I was going to bring up my Cyberpunk game. I keep mentioning.
But I mean that's, I think whenever we say dystopian is, and I want to use They Live. The main characters all die and They Live. But what did he do? Did he make things? But he exposed them. It's the same thing with Soylent Green. It's made of people. You have that climatic aspect, and then
it's
you
even
play
like
a different character because you've done the full arc for your current character.
Yeah,
it's like the Cyberpunk game I've mentioned, where we totally ignored the campaign. The thing the game master was proposing, and the game master was cool with that because he had a calendar like Brian has, because you got to have that as a game master. That's the fundamental number one thing you need, is to know key events are happening. We all owned, for those of you who haven't heard the story before, we all owned a nightclub in the game, right? We like the Rocker Boys were the band. The tech.
Okay, what's the point, Justin? Wait, it's not that. Okay, you owned a nightclub.
Yeah, but because we weren't doing the missions, we were just hanging out in the club doing club stuff. Eventually, we got eminent domained by a corporation and became a freaking Taco Bell or a 7-Eleven or something like that. We could have kept playing that, much demoted in the world because we no longer had our primary resource, but we chose not to. I couldn't tell you the name of that character. I'd have to go find the character sheet because I don't care about that character. The fun was that event. There's this one time a band camp moment in that game for me.
Well, I'm going to bring up a little bit different there, which is, let's assume that you did do all that and you kind of ignored whatever was going on, and then you find out, oh, this is so terrible. Yeah, but if you still use that same story, you use a different group, which is, it's the same world. It's in a different area.
Yeah, it's still Night City.
Yeah. Hey, guess what? Did you hear about what happened in that nightclub and those runners that happened over there? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. We won't let that happen to us. We're going to stop that. Perfect example.
None of our characters died. We could get that group back together and play all those characters the next day.
Well, no. Just what I'm saying is,
it's been 4 or 5 years, but
yeah, but I mean, but what you can do is you can, I think the problem is that we look at it as I have to play the same character the entire hour. Instead of saying my character went through a full arc, You know,
Yeah.
like no one really cares. Let's be honest. After Bilbo threw the stupid ring in the thing.
There's a reason why he went into the West with the elves.
Well, that was 60 or 70 years later. No, what I'm saying is that he did that, but guess what? After you throw it in the ring, that his arc is done. You start new characters in the same world, and you say, okay, Sauron is gone. Now we're going over into this next part, and then you build from there. I think sometimes it's just like They Live. Okay, your character died from exposing all the monsters. Your next characters, your next group, guess what they're doing? Now they're going to fight these because now you've moved the storyline, and I think that's one thing. Actually, you know, we talk about Alien. They do their one shots. I call them one shot. They're not one shots. They're self-contained adventures that are 3 acts, which means you can play it probably 18 to 20 hours to get it done. But guess what? This group over here, when they're finished, ties in to the next adventure with completely different characters, and then the next when these guys are done, whether they survive or not, then you go to the next one, and these are new characters, but it's all tied in together, and that's I guess that's what it comes down to. I don't know.
Do they have to be new characters?
Yes, because they're completely different. Because in the first one, you're just kind of space truckers. In the second one, you're space marines, and the third one, you're kind of you can probably do the space truck. But the whole point is that and to be fair, those are not the campaign levels. If those are really deadly, but they don't make them deadly for the first few sessions. It's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So like Act 1, it might be, hey, observe so and so and see what they're doing. And then by Act 3, your job is to blow up the ship. Okay, those are you know, but you have to build up to that point. And I think it does a really good watching. Not that I play it, but watching a lot of people play it online. It was very interesting watching the players. You know, who can I trust? Who can I not trust? And it slowly builds that paranoia between the characters. But
there's some PvP action, but it's not completely that.
Well, how do I put this? Is if you ever watched, and this is why I don't like the PvP in most times. Ever watched it when you know whenever we watch a TV show and you can tell it's building and building when these two characters don't like each other and you're just waiting and you're waiting, but it becomes more intense as you know something bad's going to happen and you're like, oh man, I'm waiting the whole season. And
like Alias. You ever watch Alias?
No. Well, Babylon 5 and Morden, Mr. Morden.
Okay.
You know that you don't want Mr. Morden to die in the first season. You want Mr. Morden to and when Mr. Morden finally dies, you're like, yes, you son of a bitch.
I know I've said this before, but Mr. Morden was actually in the very first episode of Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Go look, you'll see him.
He's like some technician that hadn't died yet or something like that.
But
he was wearing like a white shirt. He was in like one of the command areas, you know, as like a communication officer or something. It was kind of weird. I'm like, you know, watching it the second time around, I'm like, what the heck? You know, I guess they liked him and brought him back, or maybe that's his actual like kind of like origin story or something. I don't know.
J.R. Straczynski is he's full of himself.
But you know what? He deserves it. And the next part is
I didn't know he wrote Spider-Man. He wrote for the Spider-Man comic book.
He also wrote a Superman story that went nowhere.
I don't care about superheroes for some. Well, we're talking about sci-fi in this case, but you know, it's storylines. I really want that thing where you can feel that tension build up. Well, it's the same thing when you had Malari and Londo. You know, you know, those two characters were at each other, and then they went over and like, well, I'll help you out this time. I'll help you out this time, and they start moving through. And it isn't until the end, you know, at the very first episode, I guess it's the very pilot. He says, "I keep imagining seeing that he's going to kill me," and only at the end do you realize he asked them to kill him. You know, he's like, "I'm going to lose control with the thing on his neck," and he says, "You know, Jakar to kill him." And then you're like, "Well, yes, but that's a great. You want that tension to build. You want that to build up."
That was some of the best writing of all time. Just saying.
Oh,
but I wanted to chime in real quick on the superhero. You know, whenever we talk about it in these sessions, for me, I always picture superheroes more like the show Heroes, where they're never wearing the stupid freaking cape and spandex and masks. You know, maybe they're wearing a helmet or sunglasses or something like that. There's so many ways to run superhero games without the traditional Marvel and DC take on it. There are so many characters that you could build in a superhero game system.
Nightman.
Without the freaking, like even the same outfit every time. You don't have to do that. You can make modern day stories about people, or futuristic stories about people with powers and abilities beyond the normal crap. Everything from, super training, cyborgs, magic, whatever, and be playing a superhero game without all the stuff that makes people's stomach turn when they think about when you use the word superhero. That's why we got to kind of lose that, come up with another way to describe it, because like in Brian's games, I've seen him run supers, and I don't always picture them, actually, like the superhero figure that he'll pick, with the stupid spandex and all those.
They're uniforms because they're military. Yeah.
Right. You could, think of all of the TV shows and movies of people that would qualify as a superhero, but never once had a cape or a mask or all the dumb, costumes
$6 million
that would
man.
count, that you could make, whether it be all the way from, early American history, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. Some mad scientist made a potion.
So you talk about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Right, that's another great example.
Yeah.
That's another great example of way you could do it. Those are all superheroes, but you never hear that term, and every time you use the term, Marvel and DC are just freaking, cha-ching, there's something, they're using our term, whatever. There's got to be some other way to do it, to be able to get the same kind of effect, to go with the dystopian aspect. So many of the more powerful individuals in some of these movies and whatnot had like a superpower or something from like a super situation, but they're not. Think about like Captain America. If he had never
Chuck.
They do the X-Men, it's like they're not superheroes, they're mutants. And then they went, like now we have mutations and not supers, and then it's like talent.
I'm gonna bring this up as if you're gonna bring
Connell.
up the same thing as World of Darkness. You can do that very easily with for a lot of them. Depending on what you do, and I was looking into stuff like Prometheans and stuff like that. Is okay. You get this or you get that. You can do it with those, and I don't know if you want to call those supernatural, even though they're effectively super.
You could even attribute, because I know of a couple of games where the Ghostbusters, believe it or not, could have been superheroes. They
got a special device.
I'm going to say this much,
and some of them had extraordinary stats, charisma, intelligence, and wisdom, but never wore a freaking spandex or a mask. They didn't have a uniform. They had a uniform. But they were freaking superheroes.
Well, to me, there's a difference between superhero and heroes. Heroes are things that I can see.
That's actually really fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
but because you can go with like in a lot of power games, superhero games. They have like the lower power.
Applying the term super to the mystique, the lore, right? Not the ability.
Here's what it comes down to. Batman to me is more of a hero than a superhero, even though he's put in that genre. But because it's like, well, how did he get that way? Well, he's super dedicated and focused. And he spent, like 18 hours a day, and that's all he did. And I'm like, oh, okay. And you can hear some stuff like, oh, okay. And you can say, well, how much am I willing to break the suspension of disbelief? But then the other part is when you get a Hercules.
Or Hellblazer from DC. He was a kind of a superhero.
It's just a general term. I think it's in our collective, jargon that superhero is.
And if we can find another way to modify it, we would be able to use those ideas without turning people's stomach.
Well, to me, superhero means that you have abilities that are not natural for human beings. I don't mean like minor stuff. We're talking like, that's why I get turned off by a lot. Now, that said, I'm willing to accept some things like psionics as long as the weapons are equivalent or better than what your powers are. That's
Hey, Holy Diver.
So
what about like the $6 million man?
Well,
I mentioned that earlier.
Is at that point
I didn't hear that.
Cyborgs? Well, you know what $6 million will buy you now is maybe an artificial heart.
Barely. Barely.
You make kidney
wait,
transplant.
Okay, what about
Do you
the
replace-
$6 billion?
It buy you well clipped nails.
Or even the movie. Here's one: the movie Tuxedo with Jackie Chan,
I
Yeah,
never
or
saw
James Bond.
that was goofy.
You
It was
know,
fun.
Or
These
hey,
are-
Sherlock Holmes.
These are, yeah. I think
Well,
someone mentioned him earlier. I think it was James L. who mentioned Sherlock Holmes. These guys,
Yeah.
you know, literally had, you know, stats way above 18, you know, maybe even above 20, you know, but they were in not fantasy situations.
Well, see, this is what I have a problem with: is we look at 18 and forget, is 18s. How many 18s are you looking at if you're going to assume intelligence is, assuming on a rough is 10 times whatever your intelligence is. You're only looking at probably a few dozen.
Yeah, toilet paper. Get that toilet paper off the screen.
But the other part is it's just like watching Eddie Hall and Shaw. What was when you watch the of course you have to look at how many drugs they're putting in themselves and everything else.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, you can lift far more, 4 or 5 times as much. But what was it, Brian Shaw, where he said he came up to, which I have to laugh at. He said that there was a car wreck in front of him, and he literally pulled the door off. I mean, but I'm saying, okay, you're at the max, which is actually why I kind of liked in some cases when they did with Marvel, where they showed human potential maximum. You're like, okay, you have 30, and that's the human potential. Anything past that is supernatural. Or it's the
because there are incidences of women
Adrenaline.
lifting or pushing cars because of the adrenaline.
It's like Captain America is supposed to be at the peak of human potential, like the possibility.
I thought it was the super serum that also shot him above that.
It enhances his body to the peak of human potential. That's the original Captain. I don't know what they do now, whatever fucking crap they do now, but back when Simon and Kirby designed it, it was that super soldier serum gave him the like I said, the peak of human potential. So he wasn't technically superhuman. He was the best a human could ever be without being superhuman.
Well, comic books, they always write themselves into a corner and then add a new ability.
Well, I'm not going to even say that. If you look at the old Superman, well, the problem is I think that they didn't know when to stop. If you look at the old Superman, and I remember playing some of the games, did you ever see it where he actually kind of felt bullets and he had to be careful of that? I remember this. He can jump over a building. They didn't give him flying ability until
he didn't fly.
They didn't give him flying. It's like we have to keep giving him more and more. Well, and this is the problem that we have with it is you're looking at characters that really should. And I understand why they do this, but this is why I'm saying with player characters. If you look at player characters, there's a certain point when your arc is finished, it's time for you to start a new character. For that reason. Now that said, is if anyone remembers watching Batman Beyond, where they have the old Bruce Wayne, and he's like,
he's retired.
Can't do this stuff. And it's like, okay, you're still in the game, but that character's now an NPC as the mentor to your new player characters. And then, maybe, that was, what was it? Oh, I was remembering what was it, the 29, whatever it was, you're right. But
Batman Beyond.
It was Batman Beyond with where it's like, you're going to get the new stuff. And he's like, okay, you're going to take over my mantle. And then at the end, if the players want to bring them back, which is always fun sometimes, it's like, okay, we're going to get the old gang back together, and they're going to, didn't they do that with the Tick, where they would bring back some of the old superheroes that were in their 50s? And,
they ended up dying.
70s and stuff. And they're like,
epic story with that would be The Dark Knight Returns, when Batman comes out of retirement, and he's in his 60s. Superman hasn't aged. Wonder Woman's old. A Green Arrow doesn't have an arm. And at the end battle, they all come into the fray, and they're feeling that age, man. And they got to go above and beyond to.
That was kind of one of the things I liked about the Watchmen, both the comic book and the movie, is they showed
Not the TV
these
show.
these
TV show
people,
can burn.
that doesn't exist in my world. But they showed, these people, 90% of them were normal dudes with awesome training, and they still were able to do all these, cool things. And except for Vite, who obviously had an IQ of like 300 or some shit and super speed. But my point is that throughout that story, they actually showed, especially in the beginning of the movie and in the comic book, a chronological era, where, a lot of those people had to retire or were disappeared or whatever, throughout the time. You can do that and still keep the story going. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like the Marvel or DC universe where there's just every time you turn a corner, there's some weirdo in a cape and a mask. You know what I mean? That's what I loved about
That's
Heroes.
what I was trying to get at earlier with being beat cops or whatever, right? Being relatively ordinary people, because you got police training or military training, or you're skilled above the ordinary.
Well, in that ability, but the other part I like about this is, again, this is why I like Call of Cthulhu. It's like, okay, you can be old, you can get more skills, but your physical stats going down. And actually, the same thing happens with Forbidden Lands.
Travel.
Yeah.
That's why I was joking about the fitness test for eating too many donuts. You ate too many donuts this session. You gotta pass your physical, and if you don't, you're out.
You're out for training.
But the whole point is
create a new character. You went to Dunkin' Donuts, create a new character.
well, however, what you could do is very similar with it in the Battlestar Galactica, is where they had that like year separation, and the guy 100 pounds. And they're like, you need to lose that. And I know the actor wore a fat suit, but that's my whole point is you look at him and like, look, dude, you've gotten completely out of shape. You have 6 months to get back in shape. And you know what? That can also provide the character some very interesting parts is, we don't talk about this, but if your character gets laid up from having the leg injuries, everyone I've known that's had major leg injuries until they can work out, starts getting they gain a huge amount of weight. And then could you imagine that when your character comes, it's like, hey, look, guys. Well, no, I'm saying, but we're talking about characters that had like their legs blown, up or something in the previous adventure, and then they come back with the adventure. It's like, what happened to you? You're in the wheelchair, or you're walking on a cane. You've had several surgeries. You've gained like 50 or 100 pounds, and you're like, oh man, I got to go through this. And like, okay, and I think part of it is we want to do the wish fulfillment of our characters just get better and better. Ignore the fact that a lot of times your characters will get worse and worse as they accumulate injuries.
Yeah. And even in a world where you can get the bionic leg or it magically growing back, it's still going to have an impact. It might not have as much of an impact on you, but it's still going to have an impact on you.
My oldest fantasy character, she lost
all
an
kinds
arm.
of mental trauma.
Yeah, she lost an arm, and she can't do semantic spells anymore because she doesn't have an arm. She can only do verbal and shit like that.
Yeah.
So she can't, because she's doesn't quite work.
But now there might be magic to grow that back though.
Yeah, in the story, she went up against some sort of I think it was a devil, and the devil was able to do something to where no magic could cure it or fix it or anything like that.
Yeah.
But this is why I like Warhammer Fantasy. Guess what? You still get stuff, but you start accumulating at a certain point. Just like I joke about this. Is let's be honest, is you can say, okay, this character is not going on the field, but I was listening to what happened with the Mary Rose, the ship that sunk. They found one of the guys, and they looked at him, and he had basically no cartilage in his knees. They're like, what the hell was he doing on the ship? But apparently he was the person that was telling them on how to load and yelling at all the young guys like, this, open the gun ports, go do this, go do that.
He was the old hat.
Yeah, well, and then they were showing some of them where they, had the longbowmen and stuff, and they're like, okay, he's getting old, he can't pull the bow back as far. He was starting to get arthritis. I said, yeah, but that's why I said those characters start evolving. It's not that they have to die. It's like your arc is over as the major. You're gonna go out in the field. You're now gonna be, okay. You're gonna guard the king, or you're gonna, you're captain of the guard. Guess what? A captain of the guard doesn't have to fight you. He's got 10 guys that he's trained himself. And
that's the thing. The thing I dislike the most about fantasy lore is you'll get the captain of the guard, and then he'll be the best, strongest, like he'll be a
it's
boss, a level
level-based
boss, right?
Well, remember that's a level-based game. If you play some other games, he's not.
Yeah, but
Because-
it's a trope too, because it's
Yeah.
in the literature as well, right?
Well, I don't mind in the literature in certain cases because what was that one guy who was 60 years old and came out of retirement to go fight a duel, which he won.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an Englishman. I'm not saying that some people aren't kick ass, but it's like, look,
Yeah.
I'm not at my peak, but you know, if you're playing in some of these games, age doesn't mean anything. You know, I think that's part of the. I don't know. That's sometimes when we talk about story. You know, we all want to play John Carter who's infinite, but here, buddy. But I think that it's like, are you an infinite character? Well, that's great if you're John Carter of Mars.
Did you see the time?
Yes, I did. It's time. Yeah, I know. It's time for you to go to bed and time for me to shut up. And probably time for Shadow to go over to Nathan if he's having something to do.
There's no.
There's no Nathan show. That's why I let it run late. But I am running low on battery. Dangerously low. I just wanted to let you guys all have some time. Plus, as you can hear the music in the background, if I have the mic on too long, I'm worried about it picking up because there's a concert like not even 2 blocks away. I mean, I could almost hit it with a BB gun. But this is a good place to stop. Next week we will be talking about post-apocalyptic campaigns and you know all that goes along with it. So brush up on your Aftermath, your Gamma World, you know all the things that you can think of that will add to this conversation to see if we could, you know, theoretically start a dystopian game, run it through the great apocalypse, whatever it is. I want you guys to think of one. You know, what would be your apocalypse to change the world forever? And come back next week if you can, and let's see, you know, if we can inspire some people out there to run something like this, because I think, you know, sci-fi just doesn't get enough love, and there's, you know, so much that we can do to inspire people to make a good sci-fi game that's not the same old Star Trek, Star Wars. You know, even Traveler is kind of, you know, set in a way. There's only so much you can do, and I think.
Well, let's not forget when we're talking about this. The most important thing is the characters have to be willing to wear thongs and bikini tops.
Yeah,
and
chainmail bikini.
And the players at the table. I've already got my loincloth.
It depends on your player makeup. You know, the demographics and what have you.
If you brought it,
we'll be there.
I really don't
if you
want
brought
to
a chainmail bikini to the table.
No.
Connell shows up in a chainmail bikini. I'm going to take a lot of pictures and then kick him out.
It has to be spike collars and motorcycles and, you know, everything that's Mad Max in it to be a true
stop sign shields and yeah, all the typical goofiness. But
let me just run down the street to get the stop sign. Party on, man.
Take care of
Party on.
Thanks everybody for showing up. Sorry you got here late, Holy Diver. But this is what we do every Saturday night starting at 6:30. I'm going to go find out what happened to Bo. Right time, California, avocado time. Get it right, avocado time. It looks, okay. But think of an apocalypse, some sort of Holocaust that's going to devastate your world, and how it would change everything, etc. And let's see what we come up with. And everybody have a great week. Thanks for stopping by. This is a lot of fun. And I will see you guys tomorrow over at the Cigar DMs channel, where we're going to review Breakfast Club. And I'm also going to be doing that little challenge live stream tomorrow night to see what everybody did over the week on their gaming table, how much you got done, how much you got painted. I know you're working on it. I'd be working on it right now, but my boy took over my table. Can you believe that? He's working on a craft.
Right now, I've got swatches. I'm going to be painting this room. It hasn't been painted since 1993.
No, it's painting for the hobby, man, not for your fucking bedroom.
No. This is my hobby room, okay?
Oh, gotcha.
You want me to get a camera? I want the walls to look like that.
We do. Justin, we actually do, and we need to send some posters or something over to Bo's place so he can dress up his.
He also needs a can of paint. He also needs a can of Durex wall paint. That's drywall.
Yeah, we'll sheetrock his ceiling, the ceiling of his room there.
Oh.
But all right,
Okay.
guys,
All right, everybody.
Party on,
You have
everybody.
a great weekend. Love you guys. Thank you so much for showing
Party
up. And adios.
Keep it
Happy
weird.
trails.
Weird? No.
Very
Party
weird.
on.
Keep it weird.
Party on.
Keep it weird.
Party
A.
on.